All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Carey with Church of the Eternal Logos, and I am joined by the author, the now internet phenomenon. It seems like you're going to be everywhere at this point. And my friend, Rachel Wilson. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Patrick. Thanks for having me back again.
Of course.
Just me and Baselit Analyzer going back and forth, hogging your channel lately. So
I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
I enjoy the streams with both you guys as much as anybody. So Baselit, shout out to our boy Baselit Analyzer. His work is phenomenal. Love that guy.
Amazing. Yeah, if you guys aren't subbed to his channel, you're missing out. So go make sure you sub to his channel.
And sub to your channel. And that's why I tagged you. I added you in YouTube. So in the title, guys, just click her name in the title there, at Rachel.Wilson. And that'll take you straight to her YouTube channel. And also the link is in the video description. But I asked you to come on because a topic that actually I got interested in from my last conversation with Father Turbo, when we were talking about some of the radical feminist and LGBTQ phenomena going on right now in culture. He said, well, as a father, I'm more concerned about my daughters than I am my sons. And he was talking about basically the title of tonight's stream, The Erasing of Women, and how allowing men in his, female spaces, be it restrooms, locker rooms, all this stuff is slowly a process. Sports in general, we're going to try to make the case of an erasing of the traditional woman. And so I thought, who better to ask than you?
Well, I do have the first qualification, which is that I am a biological female, otherwise known as a woman. I'm an adult biological female, so I am a woman. That's true. But yeah, I do. This is something I've been wanting to talk about too, because it's such an important thing, and it's always kind of like, we're talking about transgenderism and feminism and all these things, but it's like really central to these philosophies, and a lot of people might not know that, and it's not as new as you might think. So I'm excited to dig into this one today.
Right. I am too. And we're going to hit it from a whole variety of angles before we get into a handful of not presentations, but at least specific websites, pages, articles, even Twitter posts that we're going to comment on those towards the end of the stream. And that's going to highlight on things again. The premise of this, the erasing of women, is what exactly is a traditional woman? And when you then analyze that, and we can begin by diving into what you believe a traditional woman is, but certainly having children, being a mother, part of a family, these things are things that we would consider, okay, that's tied to femininity. But the growth of synthetic wombs, doing away, what is a woman? The whole documentary by Matt Walsh, whatever you think about Daily Wire, surely has highlighted the absolute insanity in our culture that nobody wants to say what a woman is. And then the idea that these trans men are birthing persons, right? So not just synthetic wombs, but now they won't even refer to women as women. They're birthing persons. And I have an article here from Dr. Phil where a dude, or a chick, I should say, who has facial hair, looks like a dude, says, oh, I'm not a woman or a mother. I'm a birthing person. And talked about how they gave birth to a baby. And I just saw a video on Twitter that we're not going to be looking at, but it was another dude who's really a woman. And then his wife is actually a dude. It was two trans people together, and the baby that was born, they had the baby sucking the dude's nipple, who believed to be the woman. So again, we have a woman who's then pretending to be the father, a man who's pretending to be the mother. The father, the woman, gives birth to a baby, and then they have a video of the baby latching on to the male's nipple. And
Lord have mercy. That stuff in particularly, it really bothers me, just because I was like a big advocate of nursing when I was younger and having all my kids. My youngest one's 11 now, so it feels like a while ago. But when she was born, a good friend of mine, her husband was diagnosed with cancer for the second time, and they knew that he was dying. And they had just had a baby, a brand new infant. And she knew, like, she had read all the literature on how important nursing was, and she was unable to do it because they owned 3 gyms. He's going through like his last ditch effort at chemo to try to survive the cancer, which he did not, unfortunately. And she tried formula with the baby. The baby wasn't doing well with the formula, and she was having health problems. So I ended up doing double duty, kind of like long distance wet nursing.
Wow.
Which is something that was really common throughout all of history. It's not weird. It's not gross. For whatever reason, sometimes mothers can't nurse, and so they need other women to help. And this is really important for newborn development, for their immunity, for their brains, for all kinds of things. And so I was like pumping and shipping milk to her while nursing my baby, and like helping. And then because I was doing that, I was managing like a Facebook group helping other women do something similar. And just the perversion of that, because it's such a sacred and wonderful part of motherhood, to, in my estimation, to basically trick a newborn infant into latching on to a biological male nipple, is like, that's like such a violation of the innocence of a newborn. Right. And the fact that you are entrusted with taking care of them and protecting them. And it's the newborn's very first experience with its mother when it's born, and it's that bonding, and there's so many reasons why that is so important. So to pervert that right off the bat,
right,
it really kind of frosts my cookies a little bit, to be honest.
Well, it's a mockery. It's a mockery of motherhood, let alone Dylan Mulvaney, let alone these variations of, and we can even get into it eventually, this weird obsession with looking like a teenage girl, right? It's not like they look like postmenopausal women. So it doesn't matter if the dude's 65 years old. When he dresses up like a woman, he like pretends he's 18 or something. We can get into that. But so that's a mockery of like femininity and being a woman. But then the mockery of a newborn baby, that you have it latch onto your trans partner's male nipple just so you can do photo ops and talk about how this is like the new future of the family. That is not only a mocking of women, that's a mocking of motherhood, that's a mocking of parenthood, that's satanic.
It's a satanic inversion.
It's a total
from our perspective, it's absolutely a satanic inversion. And we will get into, like, I have some, as I usually do, some little tidbits on the history of like where these ideas come from, what they're really about. Because on the surface right now, you see Dylan Mulvaney and Bud Light, and you see like some of this crazy sensational stuff. And as bothersome as it is, it's easy, I think, for people to laugh it off and go, oh, that's just crazy people. That's just silly stuff. Just like, I actually have some friends I respect who were saying, just ignore it. Just ignore it and it'll go away. If you just ignore them, it'll go away. And I was like, I don't think you understand that these ideas are not new. And they're not, like, you may think on the surface, oh, he's doing it for attention, or he's doing it because he's getting endorsements. And that's probably true. But there are very serious, like, esoteric religious ideas and philosophical ideas behind this that are much older than people think, that we can talk about today. But it's not just a passing fad. I don't believe it's a passing fad. I don't think it's something that if we just ignore it and don't give them attention, they'll go away. I don't think that's the way to handle it at all.
Agreed. And let's start right there, because where I wanted to start was reiterating this metaphor, this analogy that I've said over and over that I'm sure some people are tired of hearing. But men are the castle walls, traditional masculinity, and then the women and children are the jewels inside. And so we see then we have to blame the phenomenon we're talking about. The beginning of the process, I put the onus on the men. Historically, we could, again, where you want to start that first great schism, the Enlightenment, where the 21st century, it didn't matter where you want to point it. It all points to men allowing this stuff to parade itself inside culture. Well, the women then, like, what is the jewels? So that's where I was going to open up to you. What is traditional womanhood? Obviously, we're Orthodox Christians, so we can look at the Theotokos, and everything that she embodies is really everything that's under attack. And so I was wanting to open that to you. What is traditional femininity, and how does that tie potentially to the Theotokos, or how we understand what a woman is?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a complicated thing because it's so all encompassing. There's so much to it. Like, I could probably talk about it for an hour, but I'll try to condense it down a little bit to give us a jumping off point. I think that when we're talking about a woman and femininity, God made them male. He made them man and woman. He made them male and female. He did not make a cyborg. He did not make an androgynous being that then later morphed into male and female through gender construction. And that's not what we believe, right? But where a lot of this comes from is the technological revolution and Darwinism. So you have ancient Gnostic ideas about gender and transgenderism and gender abolition. You have some ancient kind of Platonic ideas about it. But where we see it really pick up steam is with kind of the first industrial revolution, and what we're witnessing right now with this giant social media push for transgenderism. And you see it everywhere. You see it in pop culture, you see it on the internet, you see it in pornography, you see it in everywhere that you can look. You see this huge push. This is a central part of the fourth industrial revolution. So when we're thinking about what a woman is, we traditionally would think nurturing, motherhood, gentleness, like sensitivity, intuition. Like Andrew would always say that he thought I had really good intuition. Like my intuition.
Well, motherly intuition. That's a thing, right? I mean, that's a real thing.
Yeah. And we learned over the course of having a family together how important it is to have the balance between him being the person who sets down boundaries and is logical, and me being the person who is gentle and going to nurse you when you're sick and comfort you when you're sad, even if you screwed up and did something you weren't supposed to do. Like dad's probably going to lay down the law a little bit, and then mom's going to come in and talk to you about why this is happening, like the balance in parenting and things like that. But also, like, from his perspective as a man, he always says, when I get sick, I can't take care of myself. You're the person who takes care of me. And that's a huge comfort to me. And he's a very masculine, tough guy. If you guys have seen him, he's like a beer drinking, Marlboro Red smoking man's man. You know what I mean? And even he, when he's sick, wants that like feminine element to come in and kind of comfort him and help take care of him so that he can get back to being the strong protector and all that stuff.
Right.
So I think there's a very specific purpose. And from our worldview, we would say this is God's design for humanity. This is how God created us. Even before the fall, this is how God created us. So you will see Gnostic ideas and anti-Christian ideas where they get this confused kind of Western idea that the male-female dichotomy is like a product of the fall. We don't believe that. From an Orthodox perspective, God made them male and female first before that happened.
Right.
So even if the fall hadn't happened, or when redemption comes, and maybe things won't be the same, but we can expect that we'll still be male and female. This is the order that God designed. And in all the research I've done over years now, every single idea and belief that is feminist or transgender or gender abolitionist is always anti-Christian. It's anti-God, and it's anti-patriarchy, of course.
Right.
So I think when we think of women, yes, there are women who can't have children. Yes, there are women who tend to be more masculine than other women.
And that
there's always exceptions. There's always outliers. There are always people who maybe have some characteristics that are not traditionally feminine. Nobody's like perfectly one or the other, because we're human beings. But even among masculine women, there are still shared qualities. There are still things about femininity that we need, and there are things about masculinity that we need. And what has happened is that people who hate God throughout history, they want to invert and destroy God's natural order. That's the whole point. Like the whole bottom line of this is that that's what this is about. And you'll find in all the things we talk about today, the reason for the mockery, the reason for the inversion, the reason for going to great lengths, right? These people want to deconstruct and undo everything we know, because that's how much they want to rebel against God, and that's how much they hate him. That's how much they resent his order and his sovereignty over us. Right? They want to be God, and that's what this is really about. So
war against creation. And so just as you were saying, that's why you look at these esoteric occult forms of womanhood. Again, using the Theotokos as an image, we see that she's a mother, she's pure, she was chaste, she was devoted towards God, she was submissive to a patriarchal system, if you will. But when we look at then something like the growth of Baphomet out of the Knights Templars, this new image where we see a female-breasted male, sort of androgyne with it's half goat, half man. This is this blending of boundaries, as we've talked about, and this is this occult aspect where it redefines what man and woman is. And it's recasting new categories and definitions on God's creation. And so maybe now we can dive into your kind of specialty with some of the feminism and the intellectual roots within, like, how do we get to a point in 2023 where so many women, in the name of promoting feminism, or what would be perceived on the outside as womanhood and things all related to women, are then in favor of the disempowerment of women, be it trans athletes in female sports, be it sexually promiscuous men identified as women in female spaces. Again, we have some articles to pull up there. Totally common, by the way. Um, and then now wanting to do away with the idea, getting women in public to say, "Oh, we're going to stop saying women and start saying birthing persons and stuff like this."
Yeah.
So how does this tie into some of the esoteric and spiritual roots of feminism based on your research?
So it's very interesting. It's a little hard for me because I made a meme that I put on Twitter like earlier this week. It's the meme with the superhero and he's got the two buttons that he can choose which to push. And it was like, it was me deciding, should I help the TERFs defeat the feminists or do I help the feminists defeat the transgenders? And it was like,
Right.
I'm pushing both buttons because they're destroying each other for me, right? They're
Right.
like, they're doing my job for me by kind of like fighting each other. But this isn't a new fight at all. There's always been this division within feminism where you've got like sex positive feminists, and then you've got feminists who think that all female sexuality is like inherently oppressive, and you've got feminists who are trans exclusionary, the TERFs, the trans exclusionary radical feminists who are very opposed to transgenderism because they believe it erases women. And then you've got the intersectional.
Can I ask you what is the numbers there? Because I've seen the J.K. Rowling thing with the TERFs, and I've seen that lingo.
Yeah.
Like, is that a majority of, you'd say, radical
No,
feminists or a
no, I would say
minority?
that TERFs are in the minority,
Okay.
and that the intersectional feminists are the majority, and that's because that's what's been pushed in universities kind of from the start of women's studies in the 70s. So the intersectional stuff it's more conducive to this overarching plan of, you know, one world order and transhumanism and things like that. And the TERF thing, it's interesting though. Like, unfortunately for me, I have to read all the stuff that these people write, and feminists are horrible writers, just so you guys know. They're terrible writers. They're awful to read, but I do read their stuff because I want to know what they're up to and what they want, what they're planning, and things like that, and to know where the genesis of these ideas comes from. But I would say let's go back to like mid 1800s to start, because even though there's some ancient ideas about this that we could talk about, more relevant to what we're dealing with right now kind of started mid 1800s when the socialist movements were really taking off, the Marxist socialism stuff. There was a ton of like experimental communities in England, France, the United States around the 1840s and 1850s, where people were experimenting with communism and utopian socialism, and feminism was a big part of this. Here in the United States, we had something called the Transcendental Club, which included like Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and a feminist who's kind of the first real American feminist writer. Her name was Margaret Fuller, and she was kind of a gender abolitionist. I do mention her in my book for this reason. She was a transcendentalist, and transcendentalism is kind of proto New Ageism, right? And they had a very transhuman vision of overcoming the human condition, and this is something that you're going to find as a theme woven all throughout this topic. The idea of overcoming our human condition and overcoming nature. The woman I'm writing a book on right now, who was the famous Bolshevik feminist, she thought the same thing. She said, we're going to have communism, and then once we've conquered capitalism and we have full communism, the final frontier will be conquering nature itself. So they don't, they don't just rebel against men. That's a big part of it, but they're also just in rebellion against nature, against the natural order of things, and against their very humanity. They don't want to be human. And why don't they want to be human? Well, throughout all their writings, they talk about not liking limitations, not liking to have boundaries. They don't want to be told, basically, like, to be very unacademic about it, they're mad at their daddy and they don't want to have to do what he says. Right? Like, I'm sorry, they can be very academic and philosophical about it, but all I'm reading in all the subtext is you're mad at your dad, you don't like rules, and you don't want to have to, I want to do what I want. Why can't I just do whatever I want? It's so funny because it's there, even in the 1800s, it's there. So Margaret Fuller wrote a book. It's the very first like feminist book in America. It was called Woman in the 19th Century, and this was written in 1845. And she was the first American to posit this idea of gender as a spectrum, right? That nobody's fully masculine, nobody's fully feminine, but there's this spectrum. And the curse of the spectrum, we're going to find that in gender ideology, we're going to find it in sex ideology, we're going to find it all throughout psychology, this idea that everyone's on a spectrum. And so it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay wherever you fall on the spectrum is fine. And
Yep.
so she was the first to say gender's a spectrum and that nobody should have to fit into categories, right? It's this rejection of categories, of boundaries, of identities even.
Right.
A lot of them are like full-on identity abolitionists, which
Right.
gets really bizarre. But she would always compare the Muse and Minerva, which are Roman goddesses.
Right.
The Minerva was supposed to represent more of the intellect, and the Muse was supposed to be more emotional, lyrical, kind of more feminine. And so she was kind of the first one in the United States to push this idea. It got picked up along the way by different other feminists down the line. Elizabeth Cady Stanton loved her work. A lot of the 60s radical feminists liked Margaret Fuller and took some of her ideas as well. And we got into this thing in the 20th century along with postmodernism, which was post-genderism. So when they started women's studies departments in the 70s, like it started 69, 70, depending on what area of the country you were in, it immediately became this radical post-genderism, postmodernist idea.
Right.
But even before that, in 1916 in Britain, they had this very bizarre little culty group called the Urania Group, and they had a private publication that went from 1916 to 1940. And these were radical feminists, and one of them was one of the first trans women. He was born male.
Okay.
Believed himself to be female, wrote under the name Irene Clyde. His real name was Thomas Beatty. And he was a lawyer. Yeah. He was a lawyer and started this group of radical feminists. And they had this, they didn't want to put this out to the public because it was so radical. It was so crazy. And they had, yes, that's him there. They had this idea of the non-binary, right? People think non-binary is like a new thing from the last 10 years. It's not. It's over 100 years old, from what I can tell. And they had this little club, and they would write a periodical that came out monthly at first, and then it went to like 3 times a year. But they published it for 24 years. And this was a radical, like gender abolitionist type of a journal that they wrote to develop these ideas and these theories. And no surprise, this guy, Thomas Beatty, was a lifelong vegetarian, started at 19 years old as a vegetarian. This is another thing you're going to find all the time woven in with feminism and transgenderism. You're going to find veganism, vegetarianism. You're going to find socialism and communism. These ideas love to go together. And these are all like radical deconstructionists. Whatever it is about the world as it is now, they don't like it and they want to tear it down. They don't care what wreckage. They're like, we'll figure it out later and build something from the wreckage, but we want to just tear it all down. We want to deconstruct everything down to male and female, right?
Right. And one of the things that immediately just looking at his stuff, I see post-gender. And if you click on it, then what's it take you to is post-genderism, and it's humanism. It's called Humanity Plus, which is the new movement related to transhumanism.
Yes.
And so just like I had Father Peter here, we were talking about how all this trans stuff, all this stuff goes together ultimately in the larger umbrella called transhumanism.
It totally does. And it always has.
Right here. Yeah, it always has. And so
it always has.
Post-humanity is the philosophical school. It's called post-humanism. And then post-genderism is a branch within post-humanism, which is again tied to Humanity Plus and this idea that we're going to move into this new epoch, this new age.
Yes. Yeah. And I always say there's a reason why feminism never really took off until the first industrial revolution, because technology, all of these people's plans, all of their ideas about the future, depend on technology enabling them to overcome their humanity.
Right.
They don't want to submit to God. They don't want to participate in theosis. They think they can work around that and become gods through
Yep.
technology.
Yep.
So if you're born a male like this guy, and even the picture of him as a man, he looks somewhat effeminate. Now there could be a million reasons why this happens. There's a lot of theories, but basically anyone who's born a man or a woman and they decide they don't like that, it's like they resent their creator, they resent society. They say the problem is not with me, the problem is with the system, it's with the world, it's with God, right? It's with humanity itself. So with technology, we can overcome this and circumvent it and just provide a workaround.
Right.
And then I don't have to obey any rules. I don't have to submit to God. I don't have to submit to a man. I don't have to submit to any sort of hierarchy. This is another theme. They hate hierarchy. They want to abolish any sort of hierarchy, which I believe is impossible. I think you would see the world around you disintegrate if you were to accomplish that, which is why I don't think you can.
Right. I think spiritually what that is they're destroying any hierarchy so that the only one left is that which Satan has created.
Yeah.
Because you can't there you have to have it, right? So then it's like
Right.
we were ruled by the inverted power structure to destroy everything, and I think that's really what it comes down to in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, and this fellow, he was the vice president of the British Vegetarian Society.
I saw that. I went down here. He was a strict vegetarian since the age of 19. He was later vice president of the British Vegetarian Society. He was also a member of the Humanitarian League. Again, perfectly goes into everything we talk about regards to humanism, to post-humanism, vegetarian, vegan, climate change,
Yes.
all this different stuff.
Yes, you always see environmentalism packed in with this as well. Even going back to like the 1800s, you see the beginnings of the environmentalist movement. It's always wrapped up with feminism. That's why you have ecofeminism. Same thing with veganism. These things all intersect because they're part of the same worldview and the same idea, right? So,
Right.
yeah, the Humanitarian League is the one that came up with the idea of sentience. If you guys watch debates online and you've seen vegans debate, there's always this big rigmarole about sentience and what level of sentience and why you can't eat animals because of sentience, but they can't tell you what sentience is. They can't measure it. They can't tell you where it comes from. So they have a hard time with it because they're trying to explain metaphysical ideas through like a natural scientific means, which doesn't really work out for them. That aside, the theme, or what would you call it, like the phrase of this group, the Urania group, was called sex is an accident. They thought that biological sex was an accident of evolution. And I've heard this idea before, where when Darwin came out with his idea of the origin of species being evolution, and evolutionism caught on. I call it evolutionism because it's an ism.
It is. It is. It's
When that really
totally
caught on in
unproven.
the 1800s, there was this idea that the gender binary, that the sex binary was like some kind of an evolutionary happenstance. It wasn't intentional. Like we might have all been one-celled organisms at one point, and there was no gender. Therefore, from their worldview, from this scientism worldview, what is biological sex? We shouldn't honor it. We shouldn't care about it. We shouldn't respect it whatsoever. And if we can overcome it, all the better, because then there's less limitations on people, right? This is how they think. So you have to kind of understand the thought process of these people's worldview and where they come from and how old these ideas are to understand how we get to the craziness. Because normal people like us are looking at this going, this is totally insane. How can people think this? Well, coming from this paradigm of the world is a mistake, creation is a mistake, biological sex is just a happy or unhappy mistake, however you want to look at it. All these things are just random happenstance. There's no meaning. There's no intent. There's no creator. There's no anything, right? We can do with this whatever we want. We can just use technology to get rid of it all, to change it all. And that's what these early thinkers from this time period in the 1800s, the early 20th century thought. So then you get to the 60s and 70s, and the radical feminists are reading these things. They're being trained in universities. And this is where like the gender non-binary stuff and the intersectional feminism and all this crazy stuff comes out. There's a woman I mention in my book here. She's in chapter 9, I think. I just want to read you a tiny bit from here,
ahead.
if I can. Radical feminist Shulamith Firestone. She comes from a very rich, influential Canadian family. She took this philosophy to the extreme in her 1970 book, The Dialectic of Sex, The Case for Feminist Revolution. Firestone correctly understood that the nature of childbearing and child rearing meant that mothers had to depend on the protection and provision of their husbands. However, rather than seeing this as a proper division of responsibility, which requires both husband and wife to work together and cooperate in the formation of a family and a society, Firestone saw it as the original class division among humans. So she's going back to prehistory and thinking that these are all Marxists, that the original class division was between man and woman, and she believed this was a problem which could be overcome with technology. Drawing on Marxist philosophy, Firestone advocated for women to seize the means of reproduction to control human fertility by taking control of reproductive technology. She envisioned a future where children would be born via artificial wombs and that children would be raised in communal homes with multiple adults known as households, abolishing the nuclear family and the idea of parentage altogether in a return to the theoretical ancient matriarchal societies theorized by Terence McKenna. So that's where this insanity comes from. People are tripping balls on psychedelics and thinking that, oh, whoa, man, like the first class separation was man and woman. That's why, like, from a Marxist perspective, we have to abolish it. And we can't have parents. Parents have rules, and rules are stupid. And like, they're children. These are children who are just rebellious against everything, against nature, against their own selves.
Right.
It's really like a rebellion against yourself.
Right.
And then
that's what sin is, really, right? It's ultimately self-destructive, and that's what these people are in opposition to God. God's only here to save us and loves us, and so because their own hatred towards, again, could be something detrimental from their father, could be their parents, could be authority, but it leads into an ultimate rejection to ultimate authority, which is God, and that's why everything they do ends in death, sterility, and sickness, and we see it. It's all around us.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this is like the little stew of ideas that all this craziness comes from. And I've got more, but I know what you're going to go over with some of your tabs and everything. So I'll jump in with some more fun stuff along the way. But that's kind of the historical background of the ideas, if that helps you guys understand where this crazy stuff, because it feels like it came out of nowhere in about 2010, 2012, right? With remember the bathroom situation back then, where they were arguing over which bathrooms people could use, and there was a law in North Carolina or South Carolina that people were all up in arms about. And I remember Andrew, this is one of the only times he's been like wrong, which is why I remember it. I remember him saying, this is going to be the straw that breaks the left's back. Like they've totally overplayed their hand. This is complete insanity. People are not going to stand for it, and they are not going to go for it. And here we are 11, 12, 13 years later, and they're kind of going for it. They're kind of going for it. And I don't think it's going to go away. And we have woke corporations promoting it. We have schools promoting it, and all those things just normalize it, right? They just take control of the narrative, so that if somebody like me or somebody like you says, hey, this is the weird, unnatural thing, they can point the finger at us and be like, oh, you don't think all these people are normal when this many people, there's like something like 2 million people in the United States now who identify as transgender. Oh, you think 2 million people are all just faking it? You think 2 million people are not real people? You're not going to respect them? So it's used as a way to normalize it and make us the crazy people, right?
Right. Guys, everybody smash that like who's here, and feel free to send in some support. Anyway, we'll get to those towards the end. Um, so in regards then to erasing women, as we were highlighting, then it comes from these sort of occult esoteric worldviews in which, as you highlighted with, what was her name? Shulamith Firestone,
Yeah.
that the bifurcation, the dichotomy between sexes itself is some sort of Marxist oppression of women. It's the first class struggle. If we're going to get to that Marxist utopia, again, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, it's a Hegelian framework written in philosophical materialism. That's what Marxism is. And so, the whole point then is that the category of traditional femininity and traditional womanhood, along with traditional masculinity, is going to then need to be eradicated. And so, where I think it's so interesting when we talk about the erasing of women is that I obviously talk mostly about men and that men need to step up, men need to become traditional, but men naturally fight. And so I think despite how much of masculinity has been subverted and feminized, there's still going to be those traditionally masculine men because there's about that is tied to like resistance against the world that is, or lifting weights, or playing sports, or doing different things. But traditional women aren't fighters. That's not traditionally associated with traditional femininity. So the eradication and the erasing of traditional femininity from society, I think, is again, it's like the perfect play of the evil one, because
Yeah.
you can't get rid of all the men. You can again try to feminize. You're not going to be able, but you can sort of obfuscate then all the women who are actually traditional.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious on what your thoughts are, and I think that's why women are actually more vulnerable as ever, due to this acceptance of this stuff, and that's why it is the erasing of the traditional woman.
Yeah. So if you guys have heard any of my debates, that's usually one of my central points is to say, isn't it ironic that through feminism, which was, it's always sold to women as it protects women and children from violent, bad men, yet by every measure, and in the last chapter of my book, I go over this a ton. By every measure, we are more vulnerable and less protected than ever before. I have a fun, exciting new book coming out this summer, which is going to be my 15 best arguments against feminism
Oh,
in book
nice.
form. Yeah, because
Cool. That'd be a
people kind of
popular
like
one.
wanted me to. I get
Yeah.
messages all the time where they're like, I'm arguing with so and so and I need an argument against this. Like, what should I say? So it's like my 15 best arguments, and it's going to be well sourced, and it's going to have lots of stats and figures and things like that, because I like to use that to back up my arguments whenever I can. And it's very funny that it's not funny, but it's kind of funny that through feminism, women and children are the ones who are left most vulnerable,
Right.
right? We are the ones that have no protection anymore. And so even now you see men coming, and this was a South Park joke like 8 years
I
ago,
know. Let me see
right?
if I can
Where
pull
the
that up.
where the man goes in and like, enters a women's sports competition and absolutely kicks the crap out of all the women, and this strong feminist woman doesn't know what to do because she's like, well, that's not fair. And he's like, are you saying I'm not a woman, and as a woman that I shouldn't be able to participate, and I should, it's very fun. Yes, that's exactly it. That's what's really happening. And it's funny because the feminists are the ones that are like stuck between a rock and a hard place, kind of trying to defend both sides. And so now they're in a position where men are being, women of the year, men are
Yeah.
winning women's sports, women are being told that men are better at everything than you are, even being a
Right.
woman.
Even being a
Men
woman,
are
that
better at being
yes.
women than women are.
And
What
that's
do
the
you
one
think?
I've seen people kind of rebut that on Twitter, and it just gets the radical feminist or the trans, advocate just totally out of sorts when you point out, well, isn't this whole thing just pointing out that men are superior at everything, and that
Right.
men are even superior at twerking now, men are superior at being women, men are superior at women's sports. Aren't you just saying that aren't you just validating the supremacy of men in all this? And that
Right.
one usually sends them like for a loop because
Well,
they
and
can't.
it has erased such a thing as women's spaces. And
Right.
again, this is the irony because first wave feminism wanted women to be able to participate in traditionally male spaces. They asserted that my brain's no different than your brain. Just the fact that I have different genitals shouldn't prevent me from being able to participate in men's spaces and be doing what men are doing, right? So
Right.
eventually they wore down the men enough that the men started letting women into traditionally male spaces like the military, like sports. They had
Yeah.
co-ed sports. Remember the movie A League of Their Own
Yeah.
about the first women's baseball team? Well,
Yeah.
now you couldn't have a women's baseball team because there's going to be men on it.
Right.
And if they say they're a woman, you guys are the ones that decided gender is a social construct. So you boxed yourself into this little corner. And now, since you've been screaming that gender is a social construct for several decades, and men figured out, oh, if it's a social construct, well, then I can be a woman and you have to let me in your space. They can't do anything about it. They've painted themselves into a corner. So that's why, sorry, that's why it's a little bit tough for me, because on the one hand, I'm laughing my ass off, to be honest.
Right.
But on the other hand, it's not good. On the other hand, it is a problem because I have 4 daughters. A couple of them played sports and like to play sports with other biological girls. They don't want to have to run track against boys.
Right. And
I
and you're
lift
making
weights, my girls lift weights, my older 2, they're both like gym rats who love lifting and working out and stuff. But we all know that our best deadlift can't beat, a man who doesn't work out's best, just first deadlift he's ever tried usually. Like a guy
right.
who doesn't work out can just walk over and pick up my deadlift PR like it's nothing.
And that's what the guy in New Zealand did. He was like, he's competing in the men's as like a top deadlifter, and he just identified as a woman, and they were forced to let him compete, which then he obliterated. I mean, the competition, not wasn't even close. And so, what I think, again, men will always be able to establish to some degree men's only spaces, because again, this metaphor of us being castle walls, like masculine men will create that boundary so
Right.
women can't come in. Gay,
Right.
trans people aren't going to be able to come in, but women can't create that boundary. So as soon as you've allowed, okay, now there's women's only spaces, as again, Andrew made this point in a debate, women only have the rights they have because men granted them to them. Whether you want to accept that or not, that's another thing.
Right.
But
Yeah.
women's only spaces exist in environments in which men protect the boundaries for them.
Yes.
Because as soon as we allow the trans people to enter into those spaces, now you're in a girl's locker room and the girls say they don't want the trans person to be there. What are they going to do? Beat them up? I don't think so.
All you can do is call the men and ask the men to come save you, which you said you were against. You said you didn't need that. You said you didn't want that. You remember when I debated Nina and she said women can be firefighters and they can put the power lines back up in a storm, and women they have tools. They can do all the same things now because she lives in La La Land. So when you're in the women's locker room and the dude on the podium there comes into your locker room and says, I'm a woman and I'm going to take a shower with you, the only thing you can do, aside from Carrie, which is why I teach women how to shoot, the only thing you can do is go ask a man to rescue you and get this man out of the locker. So it's this great irony of what's happening. So it's funny in the way that I can dunk on the feminists and say, sleep in your own bed because you made it. I tried to warn you and you all told me I was self-defeating and giving up my power and I was brainwashed and too stupid to understand feminism. And now you are stuck in a quagmire. But the greater problem that we're going to see here is that the whole point of this and what they really want to do is eliminate gender. And the reason I read that Shulamith Firestone little excerpt from my book is because they want to eliminate the physical boundaries. So if men no longer have a monopoly on physical force and women no longer have a monopoly on reproduction, those are the two things that stand in their way the most, which is why you're seeing this big push for artificial wombs, for all sorts of ways to reproduce human beings that have nothing to do with motherhood.
Right.
The feminists love that. They
And
love that.
like the Dave Rubens of the world, which will have a surrogate mother for a
Oh my God.
baby and then take the baby. I'm talking like a week after it's born, take it away from its biological mother so that then two men can raise it. That
Yes.
is child abuse. That is
It,
disgusting.
it's horrible, and this is a big problem, and I'm doing a little bit of investigative work into this too, because surprise surprise, when you look into there's a huge boom in this. The surrogacy industry is one of the fastest growing money makers on planet Earth right
What?
now. It is.
I
It's
did not know
huge.
this.
And there's a couple of ultra wealthy people behind this who have started companies, and they're developing this technology, and they are marketing the idea, and they're trying to normalize the idea of surrogacy for gay couples, transhuman couple, like whatever it ends up being. So it's the same people behind all the other usual crap. So it's not just some loving thing where we want everyone to be parents, and you get into some really crazy doublethink, because it's like the same person, the same people who generally are very like pro-abortion are the same people who are really into this surrogacy stuff. And it's like, well, wait a second. You're always telling us we need abortion because there's not enough people to adopt the babies that are already there, but then you're starting companies to
Right.
create surrogate wombs, like rent-a-wombs for
Rent a
gay
womb.
men
Yep.
couples. Why can't the gay men, not that I want gay men to adopt, I think that's a terrible idea,
Right.
and we've seen some cases where it's gone as bad as you would guess, and those people are being prosecuted. I don't know if you saw that one with the couple. What was it, down in Georgia, I think?
Oh, yes.
That was in the news, that they were abusing those two adopted boys so horribly.
Yes.
But now we're going to have rent-a-wombs where there's just ladies who this is their job. They just perpetually have babies for other people. And what are you going to do then? Like, how are you going to? There will be no monitoring. There will be
Right.
nobody checking to
And
make sure no funny stuff's
that sounds
going
like
on.
almost another form of abortion, because for the woman to give birth to a baby and then just say bye to it is totally unnatural. And for a woman to do that multiple times, it's almost like, again, the science has come out with female promiscuity. So the more
Yeah.
men, usually the number that I've seen referenced in academic studies is 6, when she slept
Mhm.
and broke up, so had a sexual relationship with somebody, then ended it and moved on to another person. Once they've gone beyond 6, the rates of divorce and unfulfillment in relationships skyrockets.
Yeah.
So that has to do with breaking your pair bonding ability
Yeah.
with somebody. Well, that have to also be true with these women that give birth to babies and then just give them away to the gay couples. I mean,
Well,
that's
honestly, this is something that in like all the MK Ultra stuff that I've studied, when they do ritual abuse to people, it's for the purpose of creating people that do not have those connections and cannot make those connections. So it's kind of created this perfect storm where you have broken families now. We've got the majority of kids being raised in broken homes with only one bio parent if they're lucky. Step parents coming and going. I don't know how many people these days are raised by a single mom who's had like boyfriend after boyfriend after boyfriend go through the house while they're growing up. So the kids are promiscuous. They're starting to view pornography at the age of 11 on average,
yep.
right? So it's not shocking to me that there's a large group of women who don't feel the pair bonding, who don't have that motherly bond, who aren't married, who are like, yeah, I'll just rent this womb. I'm not using it for anything. I don't care about it.
Yeah, I don't personally want children. The
Yeah,
most
I
of
don't
them are
want
single
babies.
women.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're not actually mothers, single women that will
Yeah.
then basically give birth a baby and give it away.
Yeah.
It's like, how crazy is that?
It's very crazy, but this is what Shulamith Firestone wanted in her 1970 book. She was hoping this would be how things developed, because she felt like, well, that will make women and men more equal. And in another 1985 book, which you should read, Patrick, because of all your work on transhumanism, by
Yeah.
Donna Haraway, it's
Okay, let
called
me pull this up.
the
Go ahead.
Cyborg Manifesto by
Oh,
Donna
yes, I'm familiar.
Haraway.
I've not read it. I've read about it though.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's terrible writing, of course, because it's a feminist who wrote it. But she uses a cyborg as like a an analogy, but also not an analogy. So she kind of imagines a future where there's no gender binary, where women are not the childbearers. She wants a future where women as childbearers goes away, because she believed that women could never have labor equality. Again, another Marxist. Women will never reach labor equality as long as they are childbearers, because then men will always just look at us as baby factories and we won't be in the labor market. If we're having babies, this is like the number one way to dismantle the income gap. There's an income gap because on average women have babies, and when you have babies you leave the workforce, at least even if you're like a working mom, you leave temporarily. But many women, I even have friends who are feminists, like I went to school with and knew all through college and everything, that they were feminists, and they got out and had a baby and they went, okay, I'm staying home because I don't care about my job. So she saw that as long as women are mothers and care about motherhood, they're never going to be totally equal to men. There's going to be a difference. So we have to eradicate the difference, eliminate the difference, and that this was reproductive justice. You guys have probably heard that term. Yep. It's usually used in reference to abortion, but sometimes it's used in this way, where they wanted birth persons, birthing persons. This is an idea that's as old as I am, at least, if not older, where eventually via technology, men and women can have babies. Men and women can breastfeed. One of the very first feminists I ever debated, her argument to me was that men could breastfeed because we can give them hormones to make them lactate, and the men should stay home and breastfeed the babies so the women can go to work. I'm not even kidding. Obviously, like, it didn't go over well for her, and it was a grand victory for me. But they really think this. They really think, oh, well, if I want to be equal with men, I can't be a mother. Motherhood, and this was the way my mother thought of it. Motherhood is a ball and chain. It holds you back. And when I got older and had my own kids, I finally asked my mother, because she said that it holds you back. You're never going to do anything with 5 kids, Rachel. You're never going to be anything. You're never going to get anywhere with 5 kids. It's going to hold you back. And I said, from what? I always hear this. I always hear it's going to hold me back. From what? What grand future is there for me that I can only have if I'm not a mother?
Right.
Because my mom basically quit motherhood when I was like 16. She just decided she didn't like it. She wasn't going to do it anymore. And she just kind of quit. Well, wow. Did she go off and have like a grand career? Did she go off and change the world? Did she cure cancer? Did she become a neurosurgeon? Did she save children in Africa? No, she sat in a bar where she sits to this day. And this is the thing about feminism that drives me nuts, is I'm always being told that me being a mother and me having children is holding me back. And when I say, from what? They can never tell me. They can never tell me what I'm being held back from by being a mother.
Right. It doesn't surprise me. Reading here, I want to read this quote from the book you recommended, the Cyborg Manifesto. The cyborg does not dream of community on the model of the organic family. And I have an article highlighting, again, the breakup of the nuclear family, always hating the nuclear family, especially the traditional role of the father and a woman submitting to him and building that structure. This time, without the Oedipal project, the cyborg would not recognize the Garden of Eden. It is not made of mud and cannot dream of returning to dust. The manifesto challenges traditional notions of feminism, particularly feminist focuses on identity politics, and instead encourages coalition through affinity. Haraway uses the concept of a cyborg to represent the plasticity of identity and highlight the limitations of socially imposed identities. Yeah, it's a milestone in the development of feminist post-humanist theory. Yeah. And post-humanism, people really need to get familiar with that framework and look into it. This isn't some term. This is a school of philosophy. This is not like just, oh, I can't believe people, that's funny. People say post-human. No, is these people are getting grants. They're getting tenureship. This is an entire school of thought called post-humanism, and the transgender, but the transhumanist movement is built upon this concept of redefining what man and woman or humanity written at large is. Redefine those categories, and then the traditional models that fit outside those categories need to be, eradicated so that everything fits back into these new categories.
Yes, that's exactly it. They want to eradicate the natural world and God's creation and build it in their own image. There's a lot of versions of this, but yes, post-humanism it's not a fringe idea either. Like Patrick said, it's very like mainstream in universities, and some of the most powerful, influential people on our planet right now, this is their guiding philosophy in life. Noah Yuval Harari, that guy, a lot of like Klaus Schwab, a lot of these types of people,
Bill Gates,
even Elon Musk with Neuralink.
Elon Musk, that's what I was going to say. Even Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, they're all admittedly they're post-humanists. That they believe that they'll be able to live relatively based on their wealth, at least the last three, close to as long as they'd like to live. And so they're all the major. That's where I would argue. Some people would say, well, you look at Humanity Plus or these transhumanist organizations, and they only posit 5,000 to 10,000 members. And I would say, so that the claim is that they really don't have that much influence on society. I'd say, no, absolutely the opposite. You look at the majority of video games, the majority of movies coming out. If Hollywood does actually create something new, oftentimes it has a transhumanist or trans post-human theme to it to some degree. And then the wealthiest people in the world are on board with this. So whether it's 5,000, 10,000, or 20,000, you go into that room and it's some of the wealthiest people on the planet that are all believing in this ideology.
Yes. And if one of the reasons I love history so much, and I'm such a history nerd, is because if you look at like the genesis of ideas over long periods of time, you can always see that it is a small handful of the most influential and powerful people that steer the course of humanity. It's never the majority. We are so brainwashed by this democracy talk that the will of the people and the majority and this sort of thing, that's what controls the flow of ideas and the course of humanity. No, it's always a smaller group of highly powerful, very influential people. It's not even just money, it's influence. And so that's why when you and I talk with Jay Dyer about institutional capture, we're trying to help people understand that they don't have to have the majority. The majority does not have to be on board for them to do the things they're doing. They just have to capture the institutions, because then they have all the influence and they have all the power.
Right.
So that's who the people who have the influence and the power right now are post-humanists. They are gender abolitionists. They are transhumanists. And they believe in this stuff that sounds really crazy to us. And like, again, this Donna Haraway, another writing she did was on human beings' relationships with dogs. And she said we shouldn't call them companion animals or pets. She was kind of the first to like mainstream the idea of calling them companion species. She's basically the Karen, the ultimate Karen of all dog moms. And she said that human beings' relationships with dogs can tell us everything we need to know about significant otherness. So we don't have to, we don't have to have men and women. We don't have to have husband and wife. We don't have to have mom and dad, because, well, you can just have a dog and that can be your companion. So we're going to have robots. We're going to have cyborgs. We're going to have other species that can be our companions. Therefore, there's no need for a nuclear family or parents or things of this type. It's we're going to have, remember Hillary Clinton telling people in the 90s that a village raises children, that your kids don't belong to you. And at that time, it was like horrifying to people. That's a very old idea. She didn't come up with that. Alexandra Kollontai was saying that in Bolshevik Russia in 1917. There were Israeli communities around the same time who were raising kids communally. This is a very old idea. And it's all this idea that we're going to liberate women because motherhood is the ball and chain that holds them back. The patriarchy is based on us being the reproducers, so we have to seize the means of reproduction. And that's why I think I think a lot of people are getting hoodwinked by Elon Musk right now, and they think he's on our side. He's fixing Twitter. He's saying stuff that's based. But listen, the stuff he's developing, the things he's involved in, and yes, he does advocate for, he's one of the main people out there saying population decline is the problem and we need more babies. But guess what I think he's going to do? I'm going to make this prediction right now. I think he's going to say, well, look, people don't want to have children anymore. And we do have a bit of an infertility problem. And women don't want to be oppressed. You know, we can't force women to have babies if they don't want to. So we can solve this problem with technology. Technology that, of course, he is heavily, heavily invested in, which is going to be surrogacy companies and artificial wombs. And that's going to be the grand solution, because right now we have labor shortages. We have aging populations that are much bigger than the younger populations, which causes all kinds of problems like lack of innovation. It's going to cause, they're going to probably blame the supply chain issues on not enough people. They're going to say we have population collapse. We've had these low birth rates, but we can't make women have babies. So we need surrogacy companies and programs and incentives. We need artificial wombs. We need fertility programs where, you know, if the men want to carry the babies, they can do that. So I don't know if you guys have you heard of Magnus Hirschfeld?
I'm not familiar.
Okay. Magnus Hirschfeld was the first big transgender and LGBT activist before it came to the West here, before World War II. He was in Weimar, Germany. And he had a very creepy kind of halfway house / clinic in a mansion he owned, where he did some of the first experimental transgender surgeries where they were trying to put wombs and ovaries into men. Of course, this was like some Frankenstein stuff that didn't work out and killed all his patients, but they were trying to do this in the 1920s. So again, not a new idea. This is something that people who believe in Darwinism, who believe in Marxism, thought they, in their worldview, this is the natural evolution. We have to steer the evolution of humanity. We have to control it and steer it and push it towards transhumanism. So that's why, if you want to know why a company like Bud Light would put, you're thinking Bud Light, the Andrew Wilsons of the world are drinking this cheap beer, right? While they're watching football. Why the hell would they put a not very passing, almost comedic cartoon of a trans person, Dylan Mulvaney, on their beer can? People are going, this is a terrible business decision, right? This is where the Rush Limbaugh, like boomer capitalists, they're going to lose so much money. And I'm like, they don't care about the money.
The bigger you take.
It is. And it's so far past the money. And by the way, Anheuser-Busch is such a giant umbrella corporation. They're not going to lose any money. They're going to be fine. They're probably subsidized. They're probably getting tax breaks.
They've already created a new product that people are buying. Well, I'm not going to buy Bud Light. I'll buy this. And they own that product too.
Yes, exactly. So the reason they're pushing all this stuff, the reason that you see woke corporations pushing it too, is because the people at the top who have the power and influence believe that we do have to, in a way, erase womanhood. We have to erase women so that we can get to the next phase. You know, like the man-woman binary is old. It's part of the old order that we have to destroy and deconstruct so that we can move on to something that in their eyes is better, where they're going to transcend their human nature. They're going to live forever. They're going to not have these boundaries. They're not going to have these limitations. They're going to be able to be their own gods and do whatever they want. And if two rich gay men want to find a surrogate to birth them a super baby that they can engineer the super baby to be whatever they want it to be, then they can do that, right? That's the world we want.
Hilarious. So on that Magnus Hirschfeld, went to the section on his feminism. It says 1905, Hirschfeld joined the League for the Protection of Mothers. Okay, so the League for the Protection of Mothers, they probably love mothers, right? The feminist organization founded a campaign to decriminalize abortion and against policies that banned female teachers and civil servants from marrying and having children. Okay, well, I can see them marrying, having children, but they want to decriminalize abortion. Like, what does that have to do with protecting mothers? That's the opposite. And
Well,
you see this
Margaret,
all the time, the turn in phrases and words, always saying the opposite of what
yes.
they're doing.
Yeah, that's what they always do. That's old. And by the way, he was friends with Edward Bernays. He was in
Oh
the
my gosh.
Freud Bernays circles.
Yep.
Margaret Sanger came and visited his clinic multiple times. So again, this is a handful of very powerful, influential people who know how to package these ideas and sell it to the public as a good, benevolent thing we're doing. We just want to help. We just want to help you. And so their big narrative at this time was, oh, women are just overburdened with motherhood. They just can't stop having babies. And if you guys go to my channel, I did an interview with my grandma, who's 97, about what it was like when she was a kid and when her siblings were being born, you know, in the 1920s.
Right.
And I asked her, did great grandma know what it was that was causing the babies? And she was like, of course. You know, she was like laughing at me, like, of course she did. And after the fourth one, I guess my great grandma had some medical problems where the doctor said, you probably shouldn't have any more. And I'm like, okay, this was before birth control. And grandma says, yep, my sister was born in 1927, and that's when they had to kind of stop. And I'm like, so they didn't have birth control. They didn't even have diaphragms really in the United States yet at this time. And my grandma said, yeah, but they knew what to do to avoid it. She was being very polite about it, but she was like,
Right.
they knew how to have relations without that happening. They knew ways to work around that.
Right.
So this idea that women just didn't know how to stop having babies and they just had baby after baby and that it was bad for their health, that's another huge myth, another huge historical myth that you still hear repeated to this day, that, oh, you're just having so many babies and it just wrecks your body and then you just die. You just have babies until you die. No, that's not even how our bodies are made. I have a Catholic friend that has 13 and she's fine. She has
She's killing it.
Yeah, she's crushing it. She's like blows me out of the water, but no, she's never had any adverse effects. Some women do, and that's fine. And then say you, like me, you have 5. And then on my last one, I had like a very serious autoimmune reaction.
Uh-huh.
So that was it for me. That's fine. I got 5. But this idea that having children in general is like, it destroys your health. You have like, people think that the mortality rate of birthing a baby is like way higher than it is because of things like movies and TV shows where every birth is a life or death situation where the mother's about to die. You know what I mean? No, for the most part, especially with just the most basic modern medical interventions, if there's a problem, it's fine. But they've turned motherhood into something terrifying, deadly, that ruins your body, and you'll never get anywhere in life after you have a child. You just can't be successful, whatever the hell successful means, however you define that. I don't even know what people think is successful. Like, they're just basing it off of a career, I guess. But no, it's been demonized. And then now we're hitting this weird thing where they're flipping it and saying, oh, no, it's good, but you should do it through like surrogacy, or you should do it when you're 40 using in vitro. So now having babies when you're young is bad, right? You hear this all the time. When you have babies in your 20s, you're insane and your life is over. But having babies in your 40s and 50s using massive amounts of like invasive procedures that cost tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, that's good and cool and wonderful. And surrogacy, gay couples having babies, that's based and awesome and cool and good for everyone. But women having a natural baby in their natural fertile years, I've gotten in trouble for saying this myself. I say there's nothing wrong with an 18-year-old having a baby. Absolutely nothing wrong with 18, 19, 20-year-old women having a baby. There is nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly natural. It's perfectly normal. It's not bad for you. It doesn't mean that your life is going to be trash, that you're never going to do anything with your life. That's a horrible thing to say to women. And I'm going to fight that until the day that I die, because I just think that it's such a horrible thing to tell women of childbearing age that bearing a child is like stupid, irresponsible, unwise, dangerous. We fearmonger young women to death. And now we're telling them, no, you should wait until you're 40 or 50 and have babies, like all the famous actresses and pop stars are doing. That's insane. That's backwards. That's another inversion of the natural order.
Right. And that's what I pulled up this article. I don't know if you can see this right here. This is ABC News. Not that they're reliable or anything. So I'm not saying that to give it credibility, but I'm just saying that even the mainstream, that it comes out of a study that showed, and I can go back and tell you which university it came from. Oh, okay. University of St. Andrews, Edinburgh University in Scotland. 90% of their eggs by the time they are 30 years old, and only have about 3% remaining by the time they are 40. So you're talking about, again, this whole thing, which whether it be all these podcasts that are sort of in or tangential to what's called the manosphere, that they have these young girls on, and the, one that's quite popular right now called the Whatever podcast. And really all it is having these college girls on, and honestly, they're just so dumb. I can't watch that one. I really don't watch much of the Fresh and Fit.
Patrick,
But
you might have to watch it soon in case a certain somebody.
Yes, I will definitely watch that. I'll definitely watch that. I do watch some of the clips. I've been
talking with them, so I think it's going to happen. But
I can't wait to watch that episode. You're going to kill it when you go on. But I have watched some of the clips. I don't watch. I can't get through. I wouldn't be able to get through a whole pod. If you were on there, it would be hilarious because you would set some of these girls on fire because they wouldn't know what to do with some of the responses you'll have. But the amount of people they've slept with, and then how dumb they are just about the world. I mean, even with some of the Fresh and Fit stuff, I've seen them just ask, like, name 3 countries that's not not the US, Mexico, or Canada. And like they're saying Asia and Africa, and they can't, and then they'll stop, like, I can't think of anymore. And it's like, what? Oh my gosh. And then they'll talk about on these podcasts, how they're waiting till they're 30 to get married, or I'm going to wait till I'm 35. And then they always say, well, you realize, 35 is geriatric pregnancy. And my mom was 38 when she had me. So I'm not saying it's not possible. It's very possible.
Right.
Very possible. And people
listen, if you're in your late 30s or early 40s and you're starting, you still should try and word all for it. It's not that. It's just that it's very bad advice to tell women to wait that long because it doesn't work out for everybody. Right. And for those people, it's very devastating and it's very difficult.
Exactly. And so you see that the majority, the common opinion, it seems like, amongst young women is that they're just going to wait till their 30s and then they'll just be able to find a husband and then pop out babies as soon as they want. And it's not like that. One of my buddies, two healthy couple, they've been married for a couple years, been trying to have a baby, and she just didn't get pregnant. And they were doing everything that they could. Doctor said they're good to go. There's nothing wrong with either one of them. So it's not like you just do it and somebody gets pregnant, right? It's more difficult than that. And so this new study that has been reiterated recently. This article is actually from 2010, but it was making its rounds more recently on social media. That by 30, 90% of your eggs. That's why once a girl began to ovulate in ancient culture, that they would be married off because they would begin to have babies relatively soon, which makes sense with now our recent studies on eggs and fertility.
Yeah.
So it seems like
we didn't put every teenager on birth control. So, and then you have the added factor of people growing up. So like the things my grandma could do at 14 versus what most 14-year-old girls nowadays can do are worlds apart. My grandmother at 14 could like drive a car. She could pluck a chicken and cook it for dinner. Like she could grow an entire garden. She knew how to roll cigars. Anymore. Oh, did I disappear for a second?
Yeah, you disappeared for a second. You're back.
I don't know what's going on with my internet today. It's a little bit shoddy. Sorry about that.
Anyways, we have some articles I want to go through, basically reifying everything that we've already spoken about here and get some comments. We do have some super chats. Maybe we can hit those real quick and then dive in and comment on some of these articles. So first super chat was by somebody. I'm curious what your response will be. This is actually before the stream even started. It seems like somebody who's not a regular watcher of the channel, titled Traditional Culture Preservation Society, throws in $10, says, right now, my biggest hangup with orthodoxy is the traditional demonization of female sexuality and old penitentials. Female sexuality is absolutely necessary to building a stable, functional society. So,
Well, I know who this person is, actually, Traditional Culture Preservation Society. And I don't know what you've gathered from about Orthodoxy that makes you think this, but actually, I would say Orthodox Christianity is very different from Roman Catholicism and certainly from Protestantism in that we do not demonize female sexuality. Female sexuality is a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's nothing to be ashamed of, and sex within marriage is a wonderful thing. And I plan to do some shows about this, even though it's a little uncomfortable for people. I think that women need to hear this. When you are married, you should be very generous with your husband. You should be very sex positive within your marriage. You should be not. You should be very unashamed of your sex life with your husband. That's a wonderful thing. We don't demonize female sexuality. What we do is we say that outside of the proper context,
right.
it will not aid your salvation. It will prevent your salvation. It will hinder your salvation. It will cause chaos. It will cause harm, right? So it's not, and this is something that's very different. I grew up in like a very Calvinist, like uptight Dutch Reformed kind of an ethos where it was very demonized, and it was like even within marriage, and a lot of women would have a hard time once they got married feeling like they were doing something dirty and something bad, and it was like icky. And we don't believe that. We don't believe that at all. Orthodoxy is about having big families. It's about the husband and wife aiding each other in their salvation and giving themselves completely to each other, and that includes in a sexual way. So I'm sorry you got like the wrong idea about that Traditional Culture Preservation Society, but I would say that Orthodoxy is probably the most like sex positive form of Christianity, as long as it's within marriage. We're good with marrying young. We're good with having large families. We don't believe in birth control, and we believe in each husband and wife fully giving themselves to the other person. So
right. And what you're talking about is sexuality within marriage again. Apparently a couple retarded guys who are probably betas and I have trouble with women are going off because, oh, how dare you say that female sexuality is beautiful. You're talking about within the context of marriage. And this is not talking about OnlyFans girls or Instagram thoughts or stuff like that.
yeah.
And so you're talking about
Nico
sexuality.
is joking. Nico has been a long time Crucible watcher, and he calls me weirdo. Everybody he likes, he calls them weirdo. So I think he's just joking. I don't know about other people in chat, but I think Nico is joking, you guys. He's a little bit odd with his inside jokes. So I don't think he means it. He's usually very nice to me, but no, I do get that sometimes. So I understand.
Yeah. So again, just to clarify, we're obviously when we look at our culture right now, and female sexuality is being used to destroy civilization in regards to promiscuity, the over sexualization of the female body, the way they dress, the way they act, always talking about sex, being thoughts and hoes, 304s, all that different stuff. So we definitely don't support any of that. But a chaste woman who preserves herself for marriage, that is ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a proper context for female sexuality. I just saw somebody say, what is female sexuality? Having sex in marriage isn't female sexuality. Yes, it is. You know, I'm a mother of 5. Do you think that I completely avoided my sexuality like in marriage and got 5 kids somehow? No. So, I mean, it's a wonderful thing that we should be like open with and generous with in marriage. Outside of marriage, you get into all kinds of trouble, right? And what we see women doing in pop culture these days is they are using their sexuality for control, for power, for attention, for money, and that will destroy you. And it will destroy the people around you. So there is female sexuality is a good thing in the proper context of a Christian marriage.
Next one comes from AC, and that was when we were talking about some of the feminist stuff, just some throwing up faces. Totally agree with that. AC, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Next one comes from Finlay Bennett, first time super chat. Throws in $5, says, "Hey, DPH, love from Washington." Oof. We were going to talk a little bit about Bill 5599. Hope to see you at Montanica soon. We'll be there. Free plug, website content is worth it. Well, thank you so much, Finlay, for checking out the website content. I do promote. We got some new videos that are already up for this week. If anybody would like to become a website member, please do using this link right here. Would greatly appreciate it. And will also want to say I will be at Montanica as well as you, Rachel. You and Andrew will be there.
Yep.
And
Can't
so
wait
right
to
there,
see
June 7th to 11th, everybody go check out Butte, Montana. And I'm telling you, it's a lot of fun. Again, Andrew, Father Deacon, you, myself, Father Turbo's going to be there. It's always a good time. So if you can, sign up and join. We'd love for you guys to participate in that. Next one comes from Frankie D, throws in $4.99 and says, strangely, a gynocracy is actually worse for women, kind of like how the people have less influence on power in a democracy. So he's talking about democracy. Yeah. Any comment you have on that specifically?
Women don't, as a woman, I don't want to be ruled by other women. Right. I think it's pretty obvious why that would be. Men cooperate, men compete for mates, but they also cooperate. Women used to cooperate when we had community, when we had mothers who were at home and grandmothers. So this is another big thing that we need to talk about is when, 100 years ago, if I had my 5 kids, I would be at home. My sister would be home with her kids. My mother would be a grandmother who was involved with the grandkids. We'd all be organizing community events and planning things at the church, and we'd be cooperating. But because now women are in cubicles, in offices, working for corporations all the time, and they're on Instagram, trying to get followers and likes so they can get money on Instagram, we are now just in competition with each other for the most part. There's no real reason for women to cooperate anymore. So we are in direct competition for resources, for attention, and for men. So now if women are in charge of everything, it's not good for like the women who are not in that top percent of Instagram chicks who get like millions of follows, and or the CEO babes who do have the high-rise corner office. The vast majority of women, feminism does nothing for us because we just have regular jobs. We work in retail, we work at a restaurant, we work in an office or something. We make, not much above minimum wage. We're making $40K a year. We have a bunch of college debt and life is hard, right? So living, like you said, living in a gynocracy is not all it's cracked up to be. Turns out it's not so great for most of us, and it sucks.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
And the point that you made with women competing with each other, I think is so apt because I recently saw again on these manosphere, one of these clips, I'm not sure what it came from, but a woman admitting that, she was talking about the advice from her friends and her girlfriends when she was in a relationship, how she listened to them. Then they were asking her more personal questions about it. And it came out that the girlfriend that was telling her to end it with her man and go to the club with her was actually, she found out later, privately texting her man who she just broke up with. And it was highlighting this incredible competition women have for, again, perceived men and how women are the nastiest to other women. Again, men aren't as nasty to women as women are to women.
Right.
Yeah. Next one comes from AC, and he says, day one of twerking hood. I think that's when I was talking about how
And being better at twerking.
yes, how some of the men are better at twerk. You see it. Yeah. Anyways, thank you, AC, for the $5 super chat. Do appreciate it, brother. Frankie D throws in a super chat of $9.99. Thank you so much, Frankie D. And he says, "You think Trajan and Vespasian would ever condone this war on human nature itself? I think the world these people are trying to create will be far more oppressive than Rome ever was."
Yeah. But the people who want this world think that they'll be at the top, right? They want to create a world that's really great for a small amount of people and everybody else is kind of enslaved.
Right.
So
In a way, kind of like what Rome was. So I think, I mean, I don't think Rome was that great. So me and Frankie D's made comments about the end of Rome multiple times in some previous super chats. Again, I highlighted the bestiality, women sleeping with jaguars and giraffes, fornicating with them at the halftime of the gladiator shows. So I personally don't see anything real based about the Roman Empire, especially post Caesar or anything like that. My personal opinion.
I agree.
But, next super chat comes from 2-Bit Podcast, throws in $10 and says, "I'm glad to hear other people state the obvious that it ain't about the money or the beer." Yeah, it's not about the money or the beer. It's about the agenda. And so I saw something. I don't know if it was real or not. Did they make a partnership with Blair White? Was that just a meme that was going around yesterday? I saw it all around Twitter that Bud Light reached out to Blair White for their transgender to have a conservative representation. But, as I talked about before, Donald Trump Jr. Has now voiced public support for transgenderism as long as it's beyond the age of 18. And he said in a podcast that he would be willing to wear a dress and drink a Bud Light if it meant mending the riff, right? Because he told people to stop protesting Bud Light because they, I guess, donate 60% to conservatives.
Conservatives don't conserve anything. I'm very black-pilled on American politics in general because I think the founding was flawed, and I think that the whole system is just there to create a shadow oligarchy and make people think that there's a democracy and the will of the people and yada, yada, yada. But we don't have to get deep into Rachel's politics because nobody cares.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Next one comes from our brother, Frankie D. Thank you so much to you, brother, for the $9.99 super chat. Frankie D throws in another one and says, "You guys think the nuclear family is Chad, the multi-generational family is ultra Chad. We really need to consider creating strong, tight-knit, physically close communities to weather these onslaughts." It's true.
Yeah,
can't disagree with
that's another thing that I think most of us who are like traditionalists, when we say the nuclear family, we're talking about like getting marriages that work again, and we're talking about keeping marriages together so that children can be raised in stable households. But I'm all for intergenerational family. That's why he probably sent that right before I said you used to have a community. And like part of what's so tough for women now to have children and be a stay-at-home mom is it's so isolating. It didn't used to be like that. Right. You're now like you're stuck at home by yourself with your kids, and most of the women are working full-time, and you don't have a mom that helps. I mean, everybody my age who has like boomer generation parents, they're not very interested in grandparenting, a lot of them.
Really?
And no, a lot of them are not. It's because they were raised like, I need to be free and do what I want and find myself. And, they want to retire and they want to be in Florida and they want to like buy stuff for themselves a lot of times. So like we that was Andrew and I, our experience. We didn't have much help at all. We had to do everything ourselves. And the people who have support, it's much easier for them. If you have if you have sisters who can come help when you have a newborn, if your mom comes and helps, if you have friends and neighbors and girlfriends who also stay home, then you can help each other. You can homeschool co-op. I think the community and the multi-generational family is a super important piece to getting women back in the home, because why do you want to be in the home if you're just stuck there alone all day? That was a big critique that feminism did kind of get right in the 70s when they said, you don't want to be stuck home alone all day. You'll be bored, and then you'll want to take, Xanax or whatever, mommy's little helper pills because you're depressed, or you'll start drinking, that like trope of the lonely housewife. You didn't used to have lonely housewives because
True.
they were all in communities. Like if you
Right.
go back to when my grandma was young, they were all together all the time. They did everything together. They cooked together, they gardened together, they raised kids together. So I'm
Right.
all for that, Frankie D.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I totally agree with Frankie D here too. And I think in regards to our, as he highlighted, the nuclear family is Chad, the multi-generational family is Ultra Chad. Well, that involves us also taking care of our parents. And so, as you're talking about with the boomers were also a generation that sent their parents off to nursing homes. And I
Yeah.
think this also is a breakdown in the
You sent their
generational
kids to
connection of how
daycare.
we care for each other. So
Yeah.
your parents care for you because, as the rest of the world knows, and that's why Mexicans and Indians and Chinese, when they come here, often their parents will come in their later age and they'll live with them, be it in the basement or something, because they'll take
Yeah.
care of them until they pass away. And we in the West have sort of, you know, have a third party to take care of our parents. We've outsourced that dimension of our relationship with them, that, oh, you're getting older, well, just go to the nursing home and I'll come. I saw an article, disgusting. A woman said, is it wrong for me to no longer see my mother who has dementia because she doesn't remember me in the nursing home? I know, I couldn't believe it. It was a woman talking about her mother, and she's like, is it wrong that I don't go anymore since she can't remember me? And it's like, how narcissistic. The only reason you go is for the gratification that she can remember you. Like, the point is, that's your mother. Like, that's a
Yeah.
soul.
Yeah.
She's unfortunately has dementia. That's terrible. But again, as Frankie D is highlighting, this multi-generational, this need for close knit communities, it's not just our families, but our families are indicative. If we can't take care of our parents, we're not going to take care of our neighbor.
Yeah.
And at Montanica last year, as you and Andrew were there, one of the big conversation pieces is like, we got to start focusing on communities.
Yes.
Communities are the only way that we're going to get out of here. And at least knowing who your neighbor is, living around people that you can appreciate and value and are on the same page with, is huge. And you look at the chaos inside inner cities, you know, make
Yeah.
sure you live around people that have the same values as you. I think that's going to be the big motif moving forward.
Yeah. And I mean, the way you get women who are like this, so like I've talked about this before, but I have sympathy for like the MGTOW red pill guys. I understand where they're coming from. The state of modern women is terrible. I just saw
Yep.
somebody in the chat saying, women aren't nurturing anymore, like conservatives say. Women are happier as workers, sleeping around. Yeah, now, but that's a product of the sexual revolution and everybody just sleeping with everybody all the time. As Patrick and I explained, when women have multiple sex partners, especially young, you have these girls that are 21 years old and they've been with 20 dudes already.
Yeah, and they're
Um,
open about it.
yeah, and they think it's cool. They're like, well, I'm just being like the guys. I'm just, it's just notches on my belt. I'm like a bro. I can do it. It's not a problem. That does turn them into something else that they wouldn't be otherwise. It changes the way that they think. It changes their ability to bond with people. It changes that nurturing that we're talking about, that gets kind of like wiped away more and more with each sex partner. And the other reason you see it go away is their own mothers dropped them off in daycare when they were 6 weeks old, and they were raised in daycares and public schools. And most of them weren't raised with their dad. Only saw their dad every other weekend. Mom has a new boyfriend every 6 months, right? So you have now multiple generations of women who have no attachments and don't know what it is and don't even understand how to be that nurturing, caring, like bonding person. Now, this is something that didn't happen to me, thankfully, and I'm a person that Patrick will tell you, I'm instantly like mothering everyone around me. I'm just like, let me bake you something and make you some soup and tuck you into bed. My husband's always like, I'm not one of the children. he's like, you're mothering me again. He kind of likes it, but he kind of doesn't like
He
it.
does.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm very much that way, but I think it's because I had my first daughter when I was really young. I haven't had a lot of partners. I wanted to bond with my kids and be with my kids, and I spent tons of time with them, you know, because I stayed home. And so it's been different for me. And I think modern women aren't born evil. They are made into the creatures that we see before us on the whatever podcast now. Those girls are made that way. They're not just born like that. They're a product of absentee parents, broken families, and all of society telling them you need to be a sexually aggressive boss bitch if you want to be considered a winner, if you want to be considered a successful, worthwhile, high value, whatever. You need to be like Beyonce. You need to be like Megan the Stallion and Cardi B. You need to be out there getting yours. You need to be getting clicks and likes and showing your ass to everybody. That's why they act that way. Women will go where the attention is, and women will do what everyone around them tells them to do. They're easily led, unfortunately, for them now, right? But the good news is, if they're easily led, we can also lead them back to something that's much healthier and better for them and for the rest of society. So,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, that's what Frankie D threw in there at the end. He said, 20 faces is deeply troubled, but they can be healed by God. And that's true. And
yeah, 20 Faces needs to get my book because he's saying a bunch of the silly stuff. Women are controlled by the patriarchy, blah, 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 blah. That's all baloney. That's all propaganda you've been fed. It's not true. So,
no. So again, it's totally propagandized. Next one again comes from my brother Frankie D. Throws in another $4.99. Frankie D, thank you so much, brother. Frankie D is the best. He is the man. God bless you, Frankie D. Thank you so much, brother. He throws in another $4.99. Let's see what wisdom we got this time. He says, notice how when huge portions of women dropped out of the workforce and wages went up. Fact. That's a fact. Less positions gave labor more negotiating. That's another fact. Again, another factoid right here by Frankie D. It's true that one of the ways that they've totally destroyed the buying power of the dollar and being able to have a nuclear traditional family where the man is the breadwinner and the woman can stay home with the children is by flooding the workforce with more people, which is what they're doing now with the immigrants.
It's so amazing to me because I'll say that to feminists in debates. I'll say, from 1960 to 1980, we doubled the number of people in the workforce sheerly by pushing all of the mothers and the women into the workforce in less than 2 decades. You don't think that had an effect on wages? And these people who are Marxists and talk about economics all day long sit there and try to tell me, no, it could have been other factors. It was probably this and it was probably that, and you don't know and you can't prove, but I can prove it. And that's why the book with all of the arguments is going to come out, and it's going to have all the CDC stats and the Department of Labor statistics, because it's true. It's true that when we flooded the workforce and the labor pool with women, men's wages were severely depressed. This happened in the Soviet Union as well. They flooded the labor markets there and in Germany prior to World War II. In fact, Germany passed a law in the 1930s where they were trying to keep homemakers home. If you were married and had children, you weren't supposed to work because they had such terrible economic depression of men's wages and men's unemployment. And they said, look, all the women trying to flood into the factories and work in factories, it's depressing the men's wages and making the unemployment rate among men really high in a way that they'd never seen before. And it significantly contributed to the horrific economic collapse that Germany saw in the 30s. So there's tons of proof for that. It did happen. It is a thing, and it's a problem. So if you want children to be raised by their parents and you want mom to be home, you have to have a family wage. You can't have this focus on, and this was a big criticism I had of the Trumps too. They were constantly trying to get mothers into the workforce. Tons of programs, Ivana and Donald Trump working together to get moms back to work. And I was like, why? Why are you doing that? That's a terrible idea. Why do you want moms working? It's a terrible idea.
It makes no sense. It's not good for nuclear families. It's not good for the men. It's not good for the women. And as I said before, this whole working thing, all it is exchanging the husband for the state. And that's what we've done. And that's why there's all these single women. And as we did a podcast before, by 2030, 50% of American women are going to be childless and single. Childless,
Yeah.
and guess what? All those women are going to probably have a job. And
Yeah.
so they're going to have a job, they're going to have no man, they're going to have no family, they're going to have no children, and they'll be able to buy their Grubhub and have their wine night and go to the bar and sleep with somebody. And this is supposed to be progress. This is supposed to be beneficial. If we got back to women saying, you know what, I willing to not, have to have the latest, whatever it be, or social media, this or that. And if you found a man, and here's the other thing, we mentioned this before, you got to find a man you respect. So we're not advocating on every woman
Yeah.
to just get and marry the
No.
man that you're with. Of course not. You got to find quality men. You got to make sure your picker is right and you're picking the right quality type of men, and find one that you respect and that you would want to lead you. And then you guys
Yeah.
are on a team together, but your roles are different. You don't have the
Yeah.
same roles. That would be better than, again, these women basically marrying the state, marrying their job, marrying their boss,
Yeah.
metaphorically, not literally, but that's really the priority of their life.
Yeah, and
I mean,
that's why my now famous saying is, if you want patriarchy, we need patriarchs. Sorry, but you're not going to get this all this lovely idea of like marriages that stay together and moms staying at home and everything if we don't have men who are patriarchs. They have to be patriarchs and act like patriarchs. And that's why I think orthodoxy is another, like, it's such a guiding force in my life as well, because orthodoxy literally has patriarchs, like on every level, from our church ecclesiology to
right,
our interpretation of the Bible to how we manage families. It's a patriarchal structure in the correct sense of the man having, yes, men have privilege to a degree when they are the patriarch, but they also have far and away the most responsibility. Those things
right.
go hand in hand. And there you can see why when the sexual revolution happened, a lot of men thought it was a good deal, because they thought, oh, well, now she'll make some money too, so that's not all on me anymore. And I'll get free sex with no strings attached. Like, this sounds pretty good.
Right.
Well, 50, 60 years later, now the men can't get custody of their kids. Half the time, they don't even know if the kid belongs to
That's
them.
another great point.
Yeah, and they've got women taking their jobs, and women don't want anything to do with them half the time, and there's like this growing incel problem. It turns out it wasn't a good deal for
Yeah,
men either. It wasn't a good deal for
right.
anybody.
And that's the thing. Like, the women take their jobs, and then with the hypergamy in the sexual marketplace, they want men that make more money. But
Yeah.
don't you see that is a defeating battle there? You're taking the jobs of regular men and then wanting only the top men. Well, not all of them can marry you, and you're probably going to be
Yeah.
single. Like, again, as the statistics show. Sabrina Fair throws in $4.99 and says, "Thank you for the stream." Well, thank you, Sabrina, for the $4.99, and thank you for your support and being here. Your content is constantly fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Rachel never disappoints! Exclamation mark. God bless. Well, God
Aw,
bless you,
thanks.
Sabrina. Thank you so much, and thanks for being here. And then one more before we hop into some of the stuff. We have Trans Schwab. So this is I have no idea who this is, but it's there's somebody who pretends to be Klaus Schwab, and they'll always send me, depending on, not always, but on certain streams, they'll change it from like Klaus Schwab or Gay Schwab or Trans, like, and so he's sending one today. Again, I don't know who it is. Trans Schwab throws in $10. You will chop the pee and you will be a woman. ... Supposedly, allegedly. shout out
I
to
hope not.
whoever Trans Schwab is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You will cut off the PP and you will like being a woman. So here, let's get into some of the stuff I wanted to share with everybody today. And here's one that I was sharing on. I didn't share this specific thing on Twitter. It was about this topic. But as we see here, the Denmark Women's Museum, this is again to the theme of erasing women. So we can, again, I'm sure the Women's Museum was already filled with a bunch of the stuff that you were probably criticizing in your book. So touche. So they kind of got what they deserved. But the Women's Museum gets renamed to the Gender Museum. And they put up a statue They call it a warning semi-nude androgyny. This is a Christian side. This is not the Babylon Bee. So this is the Babylon Bee's like not it's a satirical side, but they have covered over again a woman with a beard's covering his nipple. So you see this guy is creating a giant statue of a man with a beard, with a man bun, with female breasts, and a penis with a holding a baby sucking the female breast as if he's nursing the baby. And this is supposed to be the glorious statue in front of the now gender museum in Denmark. Horrific, absolutely horrific. And again, we see the same Baphomet theme: female breast, male genitalia, this weird hermaphroditic perception of like a woman and man and how this is better. Yeah, I totally agree with. But this verse here I thought was really apropos from First Kings. They also set up for themselves high places, sacred stones, and Asherah poles on every high hill and under every spreading tree. There were even male shrine prostitutes in the land. The people engaged in all the detestable practices of the nations of the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. And we're certainly seeing it come back again, it seems like. What's your general takeaway or thoughts on this whole Denmark gender museum?
Well, I'm going to look up, I want to know who did the statue and who commissioned it to be done. Because I bet that would be interesting.
Let's see if I can find real quick.
Yeah, or like maybe who's behind that? Because I mean, I know this is where everything's headed, but that's a little bizarre even for like Denmark.
I know.
Even for the gender museum.
Let's see if they. No, they're not going to have it here on their gender museum. Let's see.
We could always check later too. But
yeah.
I mean, it looks like one of those things that they do really outlandish, crazy stuff. They put it out there. Everybody goes, "Oh my gosh, it's terrible. It's disgusting. It's awful." And then 10 years later, it's still there and it's been normalized and nobody really thinks anything of it. And I mean, like, I think it's just all normalization stuff, right? And they put it at a women's museum, so it's going to influence, women who are doing gender studies and women's studies and all that stuff. They're going to see it and think, oh, look, it's art. And it's in a very like Romanesque kind of style. It's not even like a modern style, which is interesting.
Yeah, exactly. They're mocking. Yeah.
Like the statue of David or something.
Right, which is a glorification to the dichotomies between man and woman, right? So they have a very supple, soft female body with a very masculine, hard, like that's where he has like the ultimate physique, because they're representing like the dichotomies. A woman wasn't supposed to be super masculine and hard. She was supposed to have a soft, supple body. So yeah, they're totally mocking that sort of Greek Roman statuary with this freaking atrocity that they have here, which was what's so sad is that there's probably a trans that looks just like this, that has done that is a man that has the breast, and it's, I mean, we live in Sodom and Gomorrah. I don't even know how to describe the times. Again, we'll just continue to move through here and just see like how crazy our time is. The next one, again, the erasing of women. I had to bring up Caitlyn Jenner, won Woman of the Year, and she also won Woman of the Year for the ESPYs, which is like the awards for ESPN, in the same year that she was only technically a woman for 6 months. So Bruce Jenner, the Olympian runner, Bruce Jenner, went and got plastic surgery. So he got breast implants, and all of a sudden now he is a powerful, vivacious woman of the year, according to glamour.com. And then it was also, again, it was multiple awards, so it wasn't just Glamour magazine. And what did they say? Dream big, work hard. These are the wise words from Caitlyn Jenner. Oh my
This
gosh.
is the propaganda. So there's this idea that, like, my whole premise of my book is that people's understanding is that feminism and now transgenderism is something that people wanted. It was a grassroots movement that started because women were tired of being oppressed and they didn't like the traditional gender roles. And now with trans people, you see trans people have always existed. We've always been around and we're just tired of being oppressed. We're just tired of being oppressed.
Yeah.
So you'll hear this narrative and the narrative gets pushed, and that's what this is for. They didn't give Bruce this award because Bruce was the best lady, okay? And the reason you see this is classic, like, Bernays propaganda. You see him in a so this is a rare instance where he's not super slutty. He's in a classy dress with the updo and hugging the daughter, right? So it's like, oh, see, we can still have a family. My kids still love me and I still have a relationship, and work hard and dream big and you can be
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Remember,
Every
remember all
woman
the
can.
all the feminist propaganda telling women, you can be president, you can be an astronaut, you can be all these things. And by doing that, when they repeatedly put this everywhere in the media, this is when you're young and you're a girl and you're growing up and you see these things and you hear these things repeated everywhere all around you all the time, and you see it over and over and over the course of your life, you think, oh, this is what it looks like to be successful. This is normal. This is praised. You get awards, you get rewarded, you get attention, right?
Right.
Well, this is on purpose to give young people the impression that if you want to be praised, you want to be awarded, you want to be recognized, you want attention, you want to be considered successful, this is what that looks like. And we did that, you know, in the 70s, 80s, 90s with the Go Girl stuff, with like She-Ra and ass kicking chicks, female superheroes, Wonder Woman, all this kind of stuff. And of course, it's completely unrealistic. It was unrealistic to tell women you could all kick the shit out of a bunch of Green Berets when you're 90 pounds because Wonder
Right.
Woman and Supergirl can do it, or because, you know, the latest action hero on TV can do it, or whatever. And now they're acting like this is attainable for everyone. This is a picture of success. Well, do you know how much money it takes to do that? Do you know how much money is required to be a passable trans male to female? It's a lot. You have to get facial feminization surgery. You have to be on a hormone regimen that you have to do for the rest of your life. You usually end up getting breast implants. You need makeup, hair extensions, a whole new wardrobe, all this stuff. And a lot of them, the reason they end up in sex work is to pay for that. So there's a really high rate of trans people that do sex work and pornography. And the main reason that they give is that they need money for transitioning. So
Mhm.
by normalizing this and putting this picture here of a man who used to be the ideal male athlete in the 80s, and then now calling him Woman of the Year and presenting him in this way, this is extremely effective and sneaky propaganda. And this is how they did it with feminism. No 20 faces in the chat, and no to all you like haters out there. Women didn't just look around one day and decide they hated their life and they were oppressed and they demanded feminism. Read the dang book. That's not how it happened. This is all of history is a giant propaganda war.
Yep.
And this is how they steer society. This is social engineering. It's very well documented. Jay Dyer's entire channel is about it. My channel's about it. Multiple people out there talk about social engineering and propaganda all the time. Almost nothing that you think is just a natural, organic people choosing what they want because they have freedom. It's not. It's almost
Right.
never is. People
Right.
are propagandized to do what they do.
It's true. That's why I wanted to bring up these three quotes from Lenin. Give me just one generation of youth and I'll transform the whole world. You're talking about the propaganda of, again, young kids seeing somebody like a Caitlyn Jenner and the attention, the Dylan Mulvaney's of the world. This one is what really hit me. That's why I looked for it. Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted. And that's what is so scary. If you look at, I did one stream and showed the identification to the LGBTQ community went up from, this was a general survey of like public schools in the US, and it was like 1 to 2% identified. And within this was, I think that was taken in 2021. It said it was up close to 25. It was between 20 and 25% now identify as LGBTQ. I mean, that's almost a fourth of the school now.
Oh, it's just people organically choosing it, Patrick. They just have a choice now, and so they all just decided for no reason, all on their own, that this is what they want. Of course not. Of course, that's not how it happens, right? That's not how to be fair, that's not how anything happens. What people do in life, generally, human motivations are the same. People want fame, they want attention, they want money, they want to be considered successful, they want to be respected, they want to be popular. They want influence, they want power. So if you repeatedly put out the message that this is what's cool, this is what's in, right? This is how smoking, this is how you got the whole dang country smoking. It's marketing 101, it's public relations 101, Edward Bernays propaganda 101.
Yep.
You propagandize the culture. That's how you get culture. Culture is not organic, it's created. Yep. So there's always going to be a war. There's always going to be a culture war, because you're always going to have people like us who say, no, we should follow God's order. We should use Christianity as our guide for what's ethically and morally desirable, for what we consider successful or good. And then you're going to have secular atheists, you're going to have anti-Christian people. In other cultures, you might have Buddhists or different things, but there's always like value systems that are vying for control and power and influence. That's why, I mean, not to shill for Alex Jones, because I'm worried about him lately, but there's a reason.
He seems like he's too comfortable with people like Blair White, it seems like.
Yes, and with Ali Alexander and some other people. So I don't know what's going on there. Pray for Alex. But the reason his entire empire is called InfoWars is because ultimately all of history is a propaganda war. You don't win wars without winning the propaganda war. You don't conquer nations without propagandizing them. This is history 101. So yeah, Lenin knew that. And there's a reason he shouldn't have taken power. If you guys know about Lenin's story, there's no way that guy should have been in power. And it was a combination of a couple things. He had Western elite banks backing him, and he had the best propaganda machine.
Yep. That's absolutely the truth. And this next one, destroy the family, you destroy the country. The way to crush the bourgeoisie is to grind them between the millstones of taxation and inflation.
Yep.
Sounds pretty similar to the time we're living in right now, doesn't it?
Yes. And the reason they wanted to do that, the reason the Bolsheviks wanted to destroy the family, because you think to yourself, why would they want to do that? Were they just mean and just hated families? No, because if you are a Leninist Marxist, you know that private property and wealth is transferred through the father, through marriage. So you have to have married parents and a patriarchal lineage to pass down private property. There's no incentive for men to build wealth and gather resources if they don't know who their kids are. So that's why this Bolshevik Russia was one of the first places they tested out communal raising of children in something called creches. They were like the first daycares, and it was supposed to be communal raising of children. They took marriage out of the church because it was a church institution, and the church and state were combined in Russia at that time. It was like a symphonia type of situation where marriage was a sacrament of the church that transferred over to a state license. They destroyed that. They took marriage out of the church. They made it just a very basic legal contract, just like it is in the United States now, where you had no fault divorce. It's easier to get out of a marriage than it is a cell phone contract half the time.
Right.
So
it's true.
They knew that. They knew that if you destroyed marriage and you got rid of patriarchy, then you could get rid of private property, cross-generational wealth, and then you have control of all of the resources. So,
right. It's true. Next article that I wanted to talk about was, again, just Riley Gaines rips the Biden administration as Leah Thomas expresses support for the Title IX changes. Now, the Title IX is basically now including men in the whole, again, protected category of women, which is exactly what we're talking about in this erasure. For those of you who don't know, I talked about it in the Sex Magic stream that Riley Gaines is a Division I swimmer for the University of Kentucky. She should be considered the #1 female swimmer in the country. She came in second to Leah Thomas, which I believe his name is William Thomas, and he was a mediocre swimmer at best. I think he was ranked like 500 something among Division I like male swimmers. And just so happens, I think his junior year, he identifies as a woman. Now he gets to compete on the Penn swimming team as a woman. And now he's setting all the female records, swimming records, and he wins by a mile. And if you look at the bone structure, like just with Riley Gaines, when like she looks like a beautiful woman next to, and then he has these shoulders. He looks like a, he has like the Phelps model. Yeah, I know. It's like, what the heck? And so, yeah, he blows them away.
He's got like a Michael Phelps structure.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, the Michael Phelps body. Yeah, exactly. It's unreal. And so she basically went recently to San Francisco State University, SFSU, and they protested. And then a man who dressed up as a woman punched her 3 times in the back of the head while they're trying to usher her away. And this caused this huge stir where they were chanting outside again in the Sex Magic. I showed the clip, chanting outside the room that the police had barricaded her in for 3 hours, chanting trans women are women. Again, the irrationality of it. I know, for 3 hours until the police could eventually get them to leave so that they could take her out of the classroom. It's unreal. But again, this is the erasing of women. You have the actual woman who's an actual biological woman who actually is the best swimmer in the country that should be celebrated. And she's Christian. She's more traditional. And yet the man gets celebrated. And then they start to literally beat her in public because she's not okay with men in women's spaces. It is unreal. Total insanity.
It is. And for her, I feel really bad. And this is something that in strength sports is starting to happen too. They're starting to, I think the USAPL is starting to let biological males compete in women's powerlifting. And there's a lot of, weightlifters that are very upset about it. It's just like, you would think this is so absurd that it can't continue, and yet nothing is happening. And I think there's a few reasons for that. I think one is the cancel culture mob. 2 is we have neutered the men in society. 40 years ago, some man would have come and beaten the crap out of whoever was doing that to Riley Gaines. You would never let a woman be beaten, harassed, intimidated like that simply because she wants to swim against other women competitors. But
just you saying that out loud, it's hard to wrap my mind around. That's what caused people to get so angry.
But it's we have a society now where the good men can't even do anything. We have fathers who are fighting in court because their ex-wife is transitioning their child, and the fathers are being told there's nothing you can do about it.
In the state of Texas, by the way, in the state of Texas.
We're going to sacrifice your child in front of your face. It's honestly, it's almost worse than a death in some ways, because you have to watch as this happens to your child over the course of years, and there is nothing you can legally do about it. And if you try to do something about it, they'll put you in jail where you have 0 chance of helping your child ever, right? So we have hamstrung the good men who want to do something about this and put them in a situation where they can't, because there's going to be activist judges or feminist organizations or just, the gynocentric society we live in general now won't let them do anything about it. But my question, maybe I doubt you have any insight on this, Patrick, because I know you, but what kind of man says to himself, well, I'll never be the best swimmer when I'm swimming against other men, so I'm going to become a girl? How could that be fulfilling? Even if you win, you're cheating. I guess maybe it's the same reason that people do doping or steroids in sports where that's banned, and they know that they're winning because they're cheating, and you still wonder why. So you're like, well, why do you want to win by cheating?
But there's something wrong with this dude. This like the William Thomas dude goes by Leah Thomas, because Riley Gaines talked about like after one of the races, all the girls were in the locker room, and he comes over and just drops trowel with his dick right there, and like was obviously making it very uncomfortable for all the women because he just got naked and stood right there like amongst them while they basically have their backs turned to him. And it's like,
Well,
dude, that's a sexual predator. Like this isn't somebody, this is somebody who's, you know, mixed up in a lot of different ways.
well, that brings up another element of this that I do, I really do think, maybe not in every case. I think there, in some cases, men transition because it's a fetish.
Yeah.
And I think there's another group that transition because they hate women and they want
Yes.
revenge. I
That's
think
I agree as well. I agree
and
as
I
well with
think
that.
that that is a bit of a backlash against the feminist gynocentric. So like I talk a lot about how when young boys grow up now, their mother can just decide, I'm kicking your dad out. I don't like him anymore. I've got me a new man. So say goodbye to your daddy because he's gone. And the child can do nothing about it. The dad can do nothing about it in many cases. Then they go to school, and public schools and daycares are absolutely geared 100% towards girls.
Yep.
The people who succeed in daycares and public schools are girls because they sit still, they follow directions, they they're very well behaved for the most part and that sort of thing. And boys are naturally like very energetic and a little bit more aggressive, and they like to do rough and tumble play, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But in public school systems and daycares, it's highly frowned upon, and they're constantly told,
Right.
settle down, be quiet, sit still. And everything is geared towards girls, and girls are doing better in school than boys. They're doing better in college than boys because it's very femme-centric. And so, and then they get to adolescence where they face harsh rejection by girls that they like oftentimes. And then they get into college and they're discriminated against because they're boys. And then they get into the workplace, and if they look at a woman wrong, they get fired or hauled in
Right.
by HR. And it's
Yeah,
like,
there's an article going around. A woman was talking about how isolating it is. She's the only woman at her office job, so she has some seemed like a higher end office job. So let's say she's above, you
yeah,
know, median salary wage or whatever, but none of the men will like get within touching distance of her. So she was talking about all the men, they're slapping each other and like they're doing jokes in the office, but they literally keep like an arm's distance from me. They never get close. She's like, basically she was talking about how she recognized why they would do that, but it's
yeah,
creating such an isolating environment, and that men need to realize what they're doing. So men have to be watch out for the sexual harassment, but when they go out of their way to make sure you can't claim their sexual harassment, now that you're isolating them, and this is also problematic, and men have to be
right.
change
Right.
that.
So,
So what?
so what is the message? What everything you just said, what is the message you get from that if you're a guy? The only way to not get your ass in constant trouble is to be a girl. That's it. Being a man is now just problematic. No matter what you do, you're either harassing me too much or you're not paying enough attention. You're not doting on me enough, or you're paying too much attention. And now you're creepy. And it's like men are getting the signal and the idea that they cannot win as men. So
Right.
maybe a lot of them do think, well, fine, I'm going to play the system against you, and I'm going to I'll be a woman then. And then what are you going to do? You said this is a gender construct. You said that it's just a social construct anyway, and that I can be a woman. So now I'm a woman, and now I can win the swim meets. And now you can't do. Now you don't have the power and the control over me anymore. So I think that some of the transitioning is due to the fact that men are constantly receiving this message that the only way they can avoid all of this nonsense is to be women. It's like, okay, being a man's problematic. Fine, I'll be a woman, I guess. Of course, most aren't going to do that, but I do think some will. It kind of makes sense in a way. And I've talked to a few of them, like in Discord and stuff, some of the debate community people who are trans, and they're kind of forward about the fact that they hate women, and they have usually a bad relationship with their own mother, and like bad experiences with girls and bad experiences in schools, and part of them does kind of want some vengeance. It's It's
Right.
very sad, but I think
Yeah.
that, there's all kinds of things that go wrong when you try to do this crazy feminism stuff and then the transgender stuff. So,
Right. Well, when you're talking about the disenfranchisement of the men, like the guy in Texas, there's now the bill 5599 in the state of Washington that will allow the government to hide your kid from you, which literally says based on gender affirming care is how they describe it. Any youth in the entire United States can flee to the state of Washington. In the state, the taxpayer money will fund the surgery of their gender operation. And if they're under the age of 18 and you are as a parent do not support it, the state will go ahead and take them from you and then perform the surgery. That is unreal. And this is in the United States. This is the first state, the state of Washington, and it's passed both chambers. This is in effect now. The state
oh
of
my God,
Washington.
move immediately. Guy who's coming to Montana from Washington, move immediately, please. That's honestly like my worst fear. I can't imagine something like that happening, what it would do to me. I don't think I could.
Yeah, it includes abortions too. So not just gender surgery, that's what calls off, but it also includes abortions. So if
Well,
you can go to the state of Washington and get an abortion.
well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Like at a certain point, I kind of run out of things to say because it's just like,
I know. It is. And we repeat ourselves. Like, here's another one. We talked about Caitlyn Jenner. This is in this year. This is 2023, March 2023. Um, Jill Biden gives International Woman of Courage Award to a biological man. So I guess a man is more courageous as a woman than women are. So I'm sure no biological woman did anything as courageous as this man pretending to be a woman did. Unreal.
I mean, you know what, at this point, if we're going to give them all the awards and we're going to tell them they're better women than we are, then fine, you guys can have the babies. I guess if you're just going to do this to me, then you can go through all the labor and delivery and the carrying of the babies and everything, because that stuff's pretty hard. And I think it requires a good bit of strength and some courage. But I guess if putting on a dress and growing your hair out and putting some lipstick on gets you like international awards for courage.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing that I
At this
thought about
point,
too.
maybe I'll go all in too. Maybe I'll just be like,
Well, here's
fine,
what I
I'm a
thought
man
about.
now.
As they again erase these all women spaces, the bathrooms, the locker rooms, girls' sports, what's it going to do is basically, so again, like the trad Christian, ultra conservative, people that are problematic say, oh, well, women don't need to be in the workforce. Women shouldn't be doing sports. Women shouldn't be doing. Well, that's exactly where we're going to go by allowing all the trans women or the men to do it. And so in a weird way, it's like they're working in favor long term for the really traditional people, because my girls aren't going to be on a sports team with any of that
No,
stuff. My girls aren't going to be in a locker room around any of
no.
that stuff. So if that comes to high school and they play soccer or something, and now that, well, first of all, I plan on private schooling, but up to high school, I'm not sure how I'm going to do all that stuff if they're into sports or something. But it's like, no. So now it's like we're just going to go back to the 19th century, and women, they'll wear their dresses and do that because they're not going to participate in all this other stuff because all the men are there.
Maybe it'll just circle all the way back around and women will start wearing like ball gowns and stuff on a daily basis again. I don't know. Like, it's so crazy to think about. I mean, the people who think that historically everything was like the Donna Reed show or something, I mean, that's also wrong. Okay. That's something that should be mentioned, is that traditionally women's work was really tough. We were carrying water, we were keeping fires, we were doing like a lot of the farm labor.
Right.
Like I've said, birthing kids, very physically taxing, takes a lot of strength. I remember being 9 months pregnant and carrying one baby on this arm and another baby on this arm and hauling all the stuff, and like it's takes strong woman to be like a traditional woman, and we did do physical things, and we were quite strong compared to now. So like, I don't think that weakness equals femininity. And I think people get that mixed up. I think they think that women should be like fragile, and that if you're
Right.
strong in any way, that like, I get accused of that all the time. People will be like, you say you're not a feminist, but here you are, you know, in the gym working out. And it's like, well, yeah, because now I live in a modern world where I don't have to do a bunch of like difficult labor daily to survive. So I have to do something so that I don't get weak and frail and sick and
And the
fat.
people who criticize you, this is what I've noticed. The guys who criticize women the most are the weakest, most beta dudes. Like it's never like really dominant masculine men that constantly yammer on about how bad women are and women. We already know the states of it. So again,
Right.
if you're talking about 304s, yeah, of course, only fangirls, yep. But
Yeah.
the guys that are always like mocking and criticizing women, or the women, or the guys that would say something to you, oh well, how come you wrote a book? It's like, dude, look at
Here you
yourself.
are
Like,
writing a book. Why are you reading if you're a woman? It's like,
yeah. And you look at them, and the physiognomy doesn't check out.
I
They're
know.
pathetic. They're the ones that should be going to the gym, and they're criticized. It's just it's the same thing over and over that I've noticed. The men who are the biggest constant naggers of like the state of women, at least online, often are the ones that
Yeah.
have the most trouble with them. And it's like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's that animosity thing. Pretty soon they're going to identify as the woman so they can sexually assault them in the bathroom.
Yeah. It's just, it's like Andrew always says, he's like, okay, my wife has to do a tremendous amount of stuff. Like, we have 5 kids. I have to work an insane amount of hours to support everybody. So a lot falls to her. I don't want her to be weak and frail and incapable of doing anything. If she's going to homeschool my kids, I don't want her to be some dumb, uneducated chick who can't read. Like, you were talking about the girls that go on the whatever podcast and they're like dumb as a box of rocks. That's true. And it's because they grow up thinking all I have to do is look cute on Instagram and I'll be successful. So they don't care about anything else. And they're just empty headed. And I always raised my girls like, yes, you can be pretty, and you should be pretty, and you can wear dresses, but you better be more than just pretty, because that's temporary for all of us. Age gracefully, look nice as an older lady, yes, all those things, but you're not going to be sexy forever, and there better be something else to you. You have to have a personality, you have to be useful, you should have talents that you develop. Like, these are normal things, and people have this idea that before feminism, women were uneducated rubes who couldn't do anything, and we like sat in a glass case all day and didn't live or something. That's just so silly. Women historically have been intelligent and capable and strong and all of those things. It's just that we weren't trying to be men. We weren't trying to do things that men are supposed to do. We were very happy with the tremendous amount of influence that we had as mothers and wives and women in the community. And older women were so revered, which is another thing that I would love to have. I would love to have where the older women who, you know, are grandmothers are like looked up to by the whole community for their wisdom. And even the men, like the young men in the community, would have a ton of respect and admiration for the older women who are grandmothers and had a lot of kids and stuff and would ask their advice. These are all wonderful things. It's not this like, it's either the 1950s or it's the transgender feminist nonsense we have now. And that's why I always approach stuff from a historical angle, so that people can understand that that's a weird false binary that only online people believe in because they've been watching too many movies or something. So they think
Right.
it's either feminism or you're like a delicate flower who can't brush her own teeth or something without breaking a wrist because you're so weak and delicate. And that's just silly too. It's
Right. Frankie D throwed in a super chat at $9.99. Shout out to Frankie D. He says it's funny because people like 20 Faces, Destiny, etc., claim this is what women want, but their entire system collapses unless they ruthlessly deplatform, censor, fire anyone who speaks against it. True.
That's a good point.
That's a
Good
very
point,
good
Frankie
point.
D, always backing me up.
I know. No, great point. Another great point by Frankie D. And it's true. You know, the weak men, whether it be simps or leftists or the men that constantly critique women, but they aren't the type of men that could get quality women in the first place. To me, they're all on the same team. One utilizes them, sexually. You can look at the Destinies of the world, that basically the male feminists. You can play on their team, you can simp for them, or you can just sit and nag about them. The whole point, if you're a man, is to turn away and just focus on your relationship with God, make yourself the best man as possible. But yeah, they have to, like Frankie D says, their entire system collapses unless they ruthlessly deplatform, censor, fire anyone who speaks out against it.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I wasn't saying there's anything wrong with the 1950s or traditional women at all. That's all wonderful. I'm saying there are annoying, stupid people on the far, far right who think that you're a feminist if you know how to read. Like women reading, or women shouldn't be online, women shouldn't talk. And it's like, well, okay, first of all, that's like, again, a historical misconception that women never talked before feminism. I go over that in a whole chapter of my book, all the women that were writers, authors, playwrights, all this other stuff. And they could do that, and they did do that. However, I will say, I wouldn't be doing all of this right now if I had lived 100 years ago. I would just be focused on my family. It's just that I was born, Patrick talks a lot about providence. I was born in a time and a place where feminism is a thing, and it is a problem, and it is destructive, and so is this transgender stuff, and so is the erasure of women, so is this effort to erase motherhood and make it birthing persons, and whole chunks of Christianity, like Protestantism, taking Mary and just shoving her to the side and telling you not to even pay attention to her because it's idol worship if you do.
Right.
I was born in this time and place, and it's like, do you want the only people talking online to be feminists? Do you want the only girls on the internet to be the whatever podcast girls, or the OnlyFans chicks? So it's like, we are in the time and place we are in, and this is what I'm talking about because I know a lot about it. That's all it is.
I know. Oh, you're a feminist. You're a traditional feminine woman. Then why are you on the internet? Haha, zing.
Haha, gotcha.
Like, you guys are idiots.
Why are you writing books then? It's like, okay.
Why are you writing a book? How come you're funny? You're talking about feminism and you're on the internet.
Yeah, and it's like, well, okay, I started raising my kids 22 years ago. I'm almost done. The youngest one is like pretty independent. I'm still home. I'm still with them. I'm still mothering them, but I have a little bit of time to do things like this on the side. It's like, relax, everybody, relax, calm down. It's gonna be fine.
Anyways, thank you so much, Frankie D. God bless you, brother, for your always insightful super chats. Derek Cutchy throws in $9.99, says, I wonder if the Antichrist will have two natures, in both male and female, in some sick transgender perversion of Christ. Well, male and female have the same nature because it's human nature. But I do get your point. And Derek Cutchy, I believe what will happen is he'll be half man or half male, female nature, half machine nature. So I do agree with you. I think he'll be two natures because Christ is in hypostasized, fully man, fully God. I think the Antichrist will be half man, half machine, and because he can't be fully one or the other. I mean, again, I speculate, but that's what I suspect. And I think he's going to be some type of sexually transgressive, against something I mentioned even with Father Peter Hears. Whether he's going to be a homosexual or his wife will be a transgender woman. There's going to be something related to the Antichrist sexually where he's going to be sexually transgressive. It can't be a heterosexual male-female nuclear family because that isn't the full inversion. So he has to transgress all the boundaries. And so I think, Derek Ketchy, you're totally on point there, that I think whether he himself is trans, which makes sense. I could see him being a Baphomet figure. I could see him being a gay man. I could see him being a man who looks like he's in a heterosexual relationship, but he's married to Michael. We'll put it that way. So I think that's going to be, but I think we're pretty much on the same page, Derek Cutchy. What are your thoughts on that? Basically,
you guys, if you aren't going to Montana this year, you should consider it, because Patrick's speaking again, and his speech last year was fantastic.
Oh,
My
thank you
husband,
so
my
much.
husband is still talking about it a year later because he thought it was that good. But he talked about this, and it was the first time that I had really heard like Patrick's whole theory about how he thinks this might happen, and I think it seemed really brilliant to me. So I don't think I'm gonna probably do any better than what you just said. I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That it, like you said, the Antichrist needs, he can use like the internet or technology or robotics or something as like his body, like his shell, like his way to
Yep.
be everywhere, his way to be omnipotent or whatever. And I think it makes perfect sense that it would be some kind of inversion, right? Like you said, either it's going to be like a gender bending person, or it's going to have a relationship with somebody that's transgressive in that way. Yeah, I think you're totally right. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, me too. Okay, going back to our article here. Okay, next one. Artificial wombs. So the next era of motherless birth. This is from Genetic Literacy Project. So we see that they are promoting, again, motherless births. And I think I had another one that was related to this. Okay, the rise of sex robots. So, one of the things that we would typically associate with women would be being a mother. But now, like the Matrix, I mean, they have already, and I've already done research for like some of my streams. This is already done. They can grow animals and babies. They've already done it in fully synthetic wombs. So they have done the whole, fertilized the embryo with, somebody's semen. And then from there, just gestated the whole thing in a synthetic womb, which was clear. So you could see the whole thing grow and then give birth to it. So they are already doing this. This is real science. This is not science fiction. They can do it. And so that's where, again, this group, they theorize that by the year 2074, 70% of human births will be in synthetic wombs.
That's, I mean, I do mention in my book the Earl of Birkenhead in 1930 talking about this in his book, that most babies of the future, he thought it would happen by 2030. In 1930, he wrote something called The World in 2030. He thought that by 2030 we would have, so he wasn't too far off. This was a British elite guy who was in all those same circles as like, all of the British elites of that time who were into this sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, this is another idea that's like 100 years old, that they could foresee that with some kind of technology they might be able to do this, and it looks like they're trying to do it. I really hope that people reject this. I hope that women decide that motherhood is like a wonderful experience that they don't want to outsource or let robots do or have done in a lab. I think that's insane, but I can only hope that like women's drive to be mothers will will override this, at least to some degree. I'm sure plenty of people will do it. I mean, I'm sure plenty of people.
Right.
I think it'll probably be utilized mostly by the same people who want surrogates now, which is going to be gay couples, trans people, career women who want to wait until they're 50 to have their first baby, that kind of thing.
Right.
I don't know.
As we move forward here, Master Blaster throws in $20 and says, "Thanks for fighting the good fight." Well, thank you so much, Master Blaster, for the super chat. He says, to quote the great warrior poet Tom McDonald, quote, "The men playing women's sports get trophies for winning. Like, great. Let's celebrate a man for beating some women." Exactly. The whole thing is an inversion, right? So even feminism's about destroying femininity. Female empowerment is about empowering those to beat the crap out of women. So
yeah, I mean, that's why even though this is horrifying and it's bad and I don't like it, there is part of me that is laughing hysterically in the background, just because it's like, well, you got what you wanted.
Right.
You got what you wanted. This is what you all wanted. You all wrote your creepy books about it for the last 150 years about how great it will be when the gender is abolished and everybody can be whatever gender they want and we can have artificial wombs and everything. And it's like, great, you just made yourself obsolete.
Right.
Because here's the other thing is like way more men transition than women.
Yes, that's
at least
a fact
as
too.
of right now. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but it's like there's not very many women who are passing. Like, and the other thing is like women you can't get rid of a vagina. Do you know what I mean? You can't cut
Right.
it off. It's going to be there. You can do things to try to construct a penis, but you're still going to have a vagina. It's just, I don't think it works out for women even the way that it does for men. It's just one more thing that works at the patriarchy wins again, I guess, because it doesn't work out. And
The trans patriarchy wins again.
well, feminists have just made women obsolete, is what they've basically done.
Exactly, and that's our stream, literally. So here's the next one: is the rise of sex robots, which is a real thing. And I know, I just from my own research, in countries in East Asia specifically, it's becoming more and more normalized. And the idea is, if you have 304s and thoughts and these OnlyFans girls, and you can't trust a woman and she's always trying to get the best option and you can't ever know if she's really going to settle down with you, well, you might as well just get all your sexual needs. Okay, you're masturbating, well, then use a fleshlight. Oh, you're using a fleshlight, well, just get a sex robot. Now you can get a robot that will look like a woman and it'll have breasts that feel like fake breasts. And then you can just do what you want to its holes, apparently. But this is something that is growing in popularity by all accounts. This article is 2017, but it showed that year after year, sex robots are growing in popularity. People are buying sex robots. So just another erasing of women.
I wonder, how do you feel, Patrick, about, have you seen these AI generated e-thoughts that they have now?
Yes, and they look real.
They look real.
And
so is that going to depress the I mean, if you guys don't know this, the average OnlyFans model only makes about $153 a month right now. Imagine there's pictures of your private parts on the internet forever for 150. You can't even pay your car payment.
No.
And you're for doing that, it's crazy. But it's like, now that there's AI generated photos that are better and people can't tell the difference, like, what's the incentive for real girls to do that anymore?
Right. Well, and I agree. I think there won't be. And as, again, even Elon Musk in his Tucker Carlson interview said, it's only a matter of time in the near future where AI can just do video.
Yeah.
And so even the porn can be AI. And honestly, as Bill Hicks here makes a great point, I didn't want to mention it, but I will, in regards to all the sex robots, is one of the articles talked about, in regards to like sex dolls, child-sized dolls are one of the most commonly bought.
Yeah, and that's been, I believe that the UN, I have a document on my phone that somebody sent me. The UN just came out with like a new human rights, like, legal framework.
Yep, I
make
had that
sort
pulled
of
up for us.
Yeah, to make that sort of thing legal, because now they're saying it's a human right and that the government shouldn't be involved in even sexual relationships between adults and kids.
Yeah,
and
because
that
kids can consent, especially if
Right.
they're sexually conscious. Like,
Yeah,
if they
and
made
this
a decision about their gender.
this is one of my other big arguments when I debate with secularists, is that they reduce all sexual morality to consent. And I'm like, well, there's a problem with that. There's one big problem with reducing all sexual morality to consent, which is, you guys are saying that kids can consent to gender transition. If you are saying children can consent to all these different things, guess what else the logical extension of that would be? That kids can consent to sexual relationships even with adults.
Yep.
Yet they will say that we can't have true equality because women, there's a power dynamic between men and women that's unequal. But they're also going to, in the same breath, the same people say children can consent to gender transition and to relationships with adults. It's double think and it's double speak, and it's like that on purpose.
Yep.
But I mean, The only upside I could see to this with the AI robots or the AI sex girls and the robot sex girls is that it will make women who are like traditional wife and mother type of women extremely valuable and
Yes.
sought after
Yep.
by usually the right type of men, probably, because the
Right.
men who don't want to be patriarchs and don't want to be family men are just going to get the robot.
Exactly.
But the Patricks and the Andrews of the world are like, if they find a girl like what I've raised my daughters to be, I've kind of told them, I'm like, you guys are going to be really highly valuable commodity just because you're not like OnlyFans chicks. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, this is the defeating mentality here. We have one guy who says modern women are no good, so why not bypass the entire process? And this is a defeatist mentality. This is exactly what we have to stay away from as men. It's certainly not Christian. It's certainly not somebody who's going to be a strong patriarch for establishing a family. And I don't know who anti Ty Yard or Antidity Yard, or I don't know what your name is, but God bless you. I wish you nothing but the best. But I would say this is a terrible mentality to have as a man. You need to be making yourself the best as you can. And, you know, I got a girl and she's very traditional and she's exactly what we talk about. So they exist. The point is, are you a man that can get one of those girls?
Right.
That's a different question. And we as men do have to create our value. And so it is difficult. And the majority of women aren't women you want to marry. That's a fact.
That's true.
Yeah, but to have such a defeatist attitude where a sex robot should be a legitimate option, that I don't find anything masculine or you know, inspiring or anything like that about somebody just going to skip that's a defeatist mentality. That's the exact opposite. That's going to get us out of the situation.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make that point. Anyways, I only brought this article up because this is a brand new one. I think 2021 here, talking about the growing industry of sex tech. So basically, again, outsourcing sexuality to technology and just in figuring different ways out that you can basically please each other. And so doing research on Tinder, Grindr, all this different stuff. Next one is children are not property. So this is an article from last week, April 8th, 2023, of course, by Sarah Jones. I'm sure she is single and without children. She says children are not property. The idea that underlies the right-wing campaign for parents' rights. And this article is basically talking about that the right wing is using the trope of parents' rights as a way to harm children by not letting them be affirmed in their sexual identity. And so you then are a bigot because you won't recognize your trans daughter, who's a boy, because your parents' rights. And so what do they need to do? Well, to protect the trans kids, because again, there's a war on them, according to these people. You then have to do away with parents' rights because you don't actually own your children. Again, it gets back to that Hillary Clinton thing that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a mother and a father to raise a child. And that can be true whether they lived in the village or outside the village. So the idea that the village is what raises the child is this communist utopia where, again, you're like you just talked about by the socialists and the Bolsheviks, you dissolve the nuclear family. So who's there to raise it? The collective, the state, the community.
Yeah, they actually had like they wrote a code for the new sexual and family ethics of the new Russia under the Bolsheviks, where they said that children did not belong to the parents; they belong to the state. So they're totally upfront and just straight up said, children are property of the state. They're the future of the state. And even Alexandra Kollontai, the feminist woman I'm writing the book about, she said that women don't need to get married and have husbands because their primary love and loyalty should be for Lenin and the state. Lenin's your husband, ladies. Ugh.
Yeah, that's unreal. I brought up another article here. This one, again, talking about, this is a Guardian article, again, the British leftist news agency. Again, we have Lauren Gambino in Washington. I'm sure, again, she is probably childless, probably single. And her article is about parents' rights. Republicans wage education culture war as 2024 looms. This one is basically on the same thing, but it's focused on doing away with the pro-sodomy books, the pro-gay books, the pro-trans books. And again, the idea that parents are showing up at school boards. Oh my gosh, this is a right-wing Republican war, culture war, right? Education culture war. So her thing is, whether you affirm your child's sexual transition, that was the last article. This one's now allowing the school to teach it. Both are being the right wing saying this has to violates parents' rights. So therefore we need to do away with parents' rights. Same thing.
Yep. Yeah, and you're going to see a lot of states are going to clamp down on homeschooling and things like that. So if you, I think this is one area where local politics can be very effective in your area and in your state to organize and try to keep that from happening as long as possible, have as much freedom for homeschooling parents as possible, because that's the next thing they're going to try to do, is consolidate that and make it so that you no longer have the right to homeschool or choose medical freedom for your kids and things like that.
Yep. Here I got a quick videos where I just want to show everybody. This is 18 seconds of everybody's, this beautiful, brave trans woman. So just check this out. This is a man called Kaylee who identifies as a woman, brags about having a legal right to use women's restrooms. It's legal in my state as a trans woman to use the bathroom I identify with. And this has to do with, again, some of the pushback on men and women's restrooms. And so you can see this beautiful woman responding.
Go ahead, buckaroo, because they won't do a damn thing. When I tell them I'm a trans woman, they'll say okay, and they'll leave me alone. You want to know why? Because it's legal in my state as a trans woman to use the bathroom I identify with. Now come at me.
Okay.
Oh.
Come on.
Come at me.
Oh, jeez. Maybe my internet's going out now. What the heck's going on? Dang it. Come on, internet. Twitter's down. I don't know. Come on.
There's another one of those going viral right now. One of those men that's
yeah, it's this one right here.
Yes,
I got this one lined up next.
Bunch of cuties. They're a bunch of cuties. I can tell they're really serious about being women. I can tell. Like some of them, you can plainly see they don't really think they're women. You know, they don't think they're women. They're just like Joker archetypes that want to burn it all down. So they're like, I'm a woman. You can't do shit.
What the heck happened to my internet? I cannot get anything to refresh.
We're being throttled, Patrick.
I know it's the principalities. It's the principalities we're at war with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, what the heck is going on in my internet? We're clearly broadcasting. It shows the stream's still live, or is it? Maybe it's not.
It is. The chat's going.
Yep, we're still talking. I don't know. I'm refreshing the. Can you guys still hear me? I'm seeing an ending on the chat. Okay, no, we're still live. Yeah, we're live. I don't know what's going on with my internet.
Darn.
Okay, let's get back here. See. Okay, here we go. Now things are popping back up. I don't know what's going on. Okay. Okay, so here's this dude. He's been going around. This is a trans activist calling to arms. Here's the one that we were going to watch. See if this thing will refresh. Oh, forget it. My gosh, internet, come on. Yeah, this is what the statue that we were looking at earlier actually looks like. If my internet will work, what the heck's going on? Oh well.
I don't know.
Let's see if this one will play. Let's come back to Twitter. I don't know why Twitter's not working. Here's a recent one. A transgender woman. This was just a couple of days ago, April 20th. So yesterday.
Yeah.
Creeped into bed with female resident at woman's shelter and sexually assaulted her, cops say. Oh, well, isn't that wonderful? So, again, what a sweetheart she is. She looks beautiful.
I remember like 2-3 years ago when Andrew started to get popular in the online debate stuff, and he would debate people on this issue, and they were literally telling us that this does not happen. They were like, that doesn't happen. It hasn't happened. And a few years ago, it was harder to find these articles, but now they come out every day. Now it's like every day there's a story like this. So
Unreal. Yeah. So, here we go. Let's see if this works now.
To everybody within the United States that are scared, worried, have children that are transgender, lesbian, bi, or gay, this is a call to action.
Oh my gosh.
darn it.
Internet, you're killing me. What is going on with Twitter? It's just Twitter. I don't know what it is. Maybe they're servers. Maybe the leftists are trying to do something to them. I'm having the toughest time. Yeah, see, like something went wrong just reloading Twitter there. I don't know. I guess maybe we're not going to be able to do that one. But yeah, so they're erasing women's spaces. Gender roles can create lifelong cycle of inequality. Therefore, we need to do away with gender roles, traditional women. Yeah, somebody's saying it's Twitter. Yeah, something's going on with Twitter then. Gender roles. So here we go. We got to do away with traditional masculinity and traditional femininity because it is a cycle of inequality. Basically, what you were saying with the Firestone chick.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's the same mentality.
Yeah.
But this is a recent article. Again, this one's like a year or two old. And it's hilarious. It comes from a website, Save the Children, which is typically what they do, right? Save the children, do away with fathers and mothers.
Right. Right. It's the people who they're always claiming to save are usually the people that they're like exploiting.
Yeah. Here's one with this one was on the whole trad waifu movement, the trad wife movement. And I will agree that like this chick, this is an exaggeration. She dresses like she's from the 50s. She always has cleavage. Like she has all their makeup done. But there's real women that are also in this trad wife space that are doing real stuff. Like they're actually gardening. They actually have babies. They're actually showing stuff. But this one, they choose the chick that got like super famous on TikTok over like a few months. And hers is over the top. It's not.
I go after the grifter girls all the time. Like TPUSA has a little mob of phony ass grifter trad girls who are career women. Like I talked about this on Elijah Schaefer's show because he's like, I guess I learned the hard way when I hired one of them. I should have realized that she wasn't.
Now she's a feminist atheist.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Australian chick.
Sydney Watson. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is true. It's like they'll say, oh, I'm so traditional. I belong. And they'll say stupid crap. Like they'll be like, haha, I'm in the kitchen where I belong. And sometimes I joke about that too. But I literally am probably in the kitchen several hours a day. I'm cooking all the time, but I love it. It's great. These women are not though. They got fake spray tans. They got boobs pushed up to here. They've got all the like contouring and fake eyelashes and the hair extensions. And they take the pictures that are like, oh, I'm being innocent, but sexy. It's like kind of obvious, but also like not obvious. Like you can totally tell it's a grift. Like Isabella Riley Moody is one of them. She'll say all the stuff and repeat all the tropes.
Is she the one that was talking about like Andrew Tate all the time on Twitter?
Yeah, she's one of them. There's a bunch of girls that they'll be like, I love Andrew Tate. He's the best. And any woman who doesn't worship him just is mad that she can't have sex with him. And they just say all the little catchphrases and all the tropes.
Yeah, that's what I saw. Totally she was saying all the,
And they have no kids. They're usually not even married, or sometimes they are, but it's like they just got married and they have no kids and they totally live like a career woman life. And they just are. She admitted on Gavin McInnes's show years ago that it was a grift, that she's playing a character and it's a grift. And TPUSA hires these women, and then like I laughed so hard because they were promoting like a TPUSA women's leadership event. I'm like, first of all, women's leadership, but second of all, every single one of them was like career girl, unmarried, no kids. They're the kind of women who are going to get up on the stage and talk about how women need to get in the workplace and contribute to the GDP and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is what passes for like a traditional woman. This is what passes for like not feminist. So it doesn't surprise me when people come to say my Twitter timeline or watch me in a debate, and they think that about me too. They think I'm playing a character, that I must not be serious. Or I've had multiple people say, this isn't a real woman's account. Some man runs this account.
What?
Yeah, all the time I get this. And I'm like, no, I'm old, number one. I'm 42, okay? It's not like I'm young and sexy and making money off of this because I'm hot. That's number one. Number two, I've had 5 kids. My oldest daughter is 22 years old. This is not my career. I did not do this for money. I don't make hardly any money off it. I make a little bit off my book. That's it. This is something I do on the side after I'm done with all of my mother and wife duties. Okay. And it's like something that I do approach from a pretty academic kind of.
Yeah. Your research is great in your, the Roots of Feminist book. Great research.
Yeah. So but I understand why people see me and they automatically assume I'm one of these girls, because there's so many of them and they're just phony and they do like a cosplay of a housewife.
Right. Exactly. Which is against the whole thing of like trying to draw more sexual attention to yourself while promoting yourself as a traditional wife. Like this chick right here, I think it was found out that her and her man aren't even married yet. So her whole thing is being a traditional 1950s wife. And then it was like, when people ask, like, are you guys even married? Well, we live together. Okay, well then, like, you're not even, you're already messed up.
She's cosplaying a sexy housewife character for dudes who are into that.
Right.
That's all it is. So it's not really much better than all the other e-girls, you know.
Next one is feminist author suggests stay-at-home moms are unambitious and set a bad example for kids. Jill Flipovic has apologized for her tone amid backlash after the comments. So this whole thing is this leftist feminist woman basically saying that stay-at-home mothers are bad for children and bad role models for young women, that young women need to be inspired by CEOs and like women who run businesses and not women that are just staying at home with their husbands or families and having babies. And
well, I say all the time. The reason I got into this was because when I was young and staying at home with my kids, I got this all the time, even from women who would say they were conservative, Republican, Christian. I had a Candace Owens staffer yell at me on Facebook in like 2012, I want to say, because I was doing a disservice to my country by not contributing to the GDP, and I was being selfish, just staying at home with my kids. Right. And I would hear this all the time when I was younger. Oh, you're a loser. You just can't cut it in the career world. You're just too lazy. Like people would say things like that to me, or the nice people would say things like, oh, it's so sad that you never fulfilled your potential. Oh, don't you regret just being a mom? Don't you think you're going to regret that when you're older? Like you never did anything with your life. So I had to get used to defending myself from those attacks. And now that I'm doing this, I have to defend myself against accusations that I'm a grifter or a feminist. Why are you writing books? Why are you on the internet? It's like, I just can't win, man. I can't win no matter what I do. So I'm either going to get women like this who say I'm a lazy, good for nothing, do nothing, laying on the couch all day, stay at home mom. And the only reason I don't have a career is because I'm too dumb or unambitious. And then if I come on your show or write a book, I'm going to get the other people who say, oh, you shouldn't be on the internet. Why are you reading and writing books? That's man's work. Like you're actually a feminist. You just can't win.
No, you can't. Next one was, would you give up having children to save the planet? Meet the couples who have. And they always have this hideous, hideous art. I don't get what's going on, whether it be
No.
the metaverse or meta, the World Economic Forum. It's always
Yeah.
like the same cartoonish, ugly art.
Dystopian, faceless people.
And
Yeah.
we see another Amy Fleming. Again, I bet you she's childless, and I bet she's unmarried.
They all look the same.
They do. They all kind of look the same. It's the white liberal woman. So again, I just highlighted that this is another the same rigmarole of they're basically telling you to, again, erasing women. Well, don't have babies. Okay, well then what's the most beautiful, important thing a woman could do? Have babies.
Yeah.
So don't do that. It's bad for the planet. So just consume. Just go buy more products. Go sell your body on OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Next one is non-binary Dr. Phil guest. I'm a birthing person, not a woman or mother. So this woman who has been on testosterone, and this is, again, child abuse, in my opinion, horrific child abuse, that somebody can put all those hormones in their body, estrogen, well, naturally she has estrogen, but then all that testosterone, and then grow a baby in her womb. Like, what does that do to the child? I don't know, but I
don't know. I don't think doctors know. I wonder what the downstream effects of all this hormone stuff is going to be in just 20 years. I mean, this is a really bad example, but just in general, like so many people being on cross-sex hormones where you're female taking male hormones and you're male taking female hormones. There's a lot of unknowns there. We don't have like a large sample size over a long period of time of what happens when you do this to so many people.
Right. Yeah,
But
unreal.
why do you want to transition to be a man and live life as a man, but then you also want to give birth? I don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. It makes no sense.
It's like why I don't understand women who will say they're lesbians and then they date women who look exactly and act exactly like a man. I'm like,
I know, that's another one. Yeah, I hate men. I don't need men. And why does your girlfriend literally cosplay as a man?
Yeah, your girlfriend looks like Eminem from 2003. Yeah. They all have the same look. They got the hat and like the baggy jeans.
It's true.
They look like Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit.
They work like they work a factory job, and it's like
yeah.
Okay, last one I wanted to share then was, yes, trans women can breastfeed. Here's how. Again, Caitlin Burns. The commonality between all of our articles this evening are white liberal women
and hideous art.
Yep, and the hideous art. And this is about men breastfeeding with fake breasts, and that's what this article talks about. I guess are these surgeons, one in Canada, where they would basically help men lactate. Let's see here. As far back in 2010, Dr. Christine McGinn, a trans surgeon who specialized in gender reassignment surgery, appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show in a sensationalized segment that revealed she had both fathered her children and was the sole parent to breastfeed them. What's more surprising is that it took this long for a medical journal to document the process, and this documents how they can then breastfeed. Pretty degenerate. So again, we highlight all this stuff to recognize the erasing of women, and that's the commonality with everything we talked about. We have a couple more super chats, and I did not mean to go 3 hours, Rachel. We always go way long. I planned 2 hours. I'm
a chatty guest. I'm sorry. It's probably mostly
good.
Me. I will talk.
We always have great streams. So Ethan Faber threw in $2, and I think this was when we were looking at the synthetic wombs and the sex robots.
Yeah.
He said, Gnostic moment. Flesh matter bad, AI software good. It's true.
So true.
Very Gnostic worldview. Thank you very much, Ethan Faber, for the $2. And then Frankie D. Where would I be without Frankie D tonight? My gosh, brother, you are the man. Frankie D throws in $4.99 and says it's really sad because you can see some of the psychosis that these people are suffering from, and they are just pawns in the elites game. It is true. I mean, it is true. You feel sad for them, but then when they're violent and they're like mean about the whole, the whole scenario of everything, you lose a little bit sympathy for them. But I feel bad for them. I feel bad, especially for the kids. I feel bad for the people that are getting these surgeries done to them. I saw a video recently of a guy who he now identifies as a gay man, but his mother put him on estrogen before he went to puberty so he would maintain his feminine features. So he can't have children. He's infertile. He did have much softer features in his face, but he said my mom put me on hormone, basically on estrogen, hormone blockers or puberty blockers and estrogen before I hit puberty. And he's been on them for a very long time. And now he's basically stopped and he wants to just be a gay man. I mean, both of them, I think, I'm sure we have the same opinion there, but,
Yeah.
It's just unreal. Like these women, we just saw the Jazz Jennings, right? The boy who identifies as a girl. He doesn't want, I mean, this is just disgusting. Like
it's always the women pushing it. I'm telling you. And it's usually single moms, or it's those, the women who they're just horrific women and they're married to some cucked, like sad little man who won't say anything. And he's just like, well, whatever she says, I guess we'll just do that. And the woman has like a butch haircut, or she's just really overbearing mother that's just like, and I think it's a control thing for these women, primarily. And then it's also, they like the attention. I have a special child. I'm part of a community. And there's just a million reasons why, but it's never going to be the dads pushing this. It's going to be the moms like 99% of the time. And it's just one more reason why it's a terrible idea to have no fault divorce and to have no dads around. Kids need dads. I mean, this is a really good example of why kids need dads, because it's rarely ever, I can't think of a time when I've seen the dad be the one pushing this on the kid. It's the mom.
It's true. It's true. I can't either. So it's it is sad that the kids, again, they're the ones being attacked. It makes sense. The men aren't there to lead the families as the spiritual leaders. And so the women married to the state listen to the propaganda. And of course, then the children are they're the ones that are in the line of fire, and they have to deal with all this stuff. So it's really a very sad situation. Frankie D throws in another $4.99 super chat and says, Rachel, have you ever seen that meme where the pink-haired girl says, you could have been a scientist? And the trad girl says, I raised 5.
Yes, I posted that to my Gab a while back. But it's
I have
true.
not seen that one, but that's hilarious.
It's completely true. It's like, and I saw Sabrina had an awesome comment in the chat, as always. She said, your tombstone could either say, here lies so-and-so, wife, mother, beloved daughter, wife, and then, or it could say, here lies Ashley, customer service manager. It's so true. It's just so true. It's like, and we see a lot of videos online too of women who find this out too late. And I get emails, I've gotten letters in the mail, I've gotten private messages from lots of women over the last, year and a half since the book's been out, of women saying, I just read this book and that was me. I fell for it. It's really hard because now I'm older and I don't know what I can do about it. I can't really get those years back. And it's very sad. It's very sad. And I feel for them because, like I said, most of them are propagandized. This is just what they're told, and they were raised that way. And like, I was pressured very heavily growing up that I had to have a career and I had to go to college. And when I decided not to do that, it was like the end of the world. It was the end of the world for my parents. It was the end of the world for every adult that I knew. And like, all my friends went to college and I was the only one who didn't. And everybody would constantly say these horrible things to me, like, oh, it's a shame you were so smart. Oh, it's such a shame that you never did anything with your life. And I'm like, I'm raising 5 kids. You think I'm not doing any? What do you think I'm doing all day? You think I'm laying on the couch watching soap operas? Like,
terrible.
But it's just it's the way that the culture propagandizes. It's the current thing, right? It's the way that we talk about women and the way that we talk about success and expectations is always like, well, you get all these accolades and recognition and awards and applause if you go to college. And every parent in the boomer generation wanted to say, my daughter goes to this college and my daughter has a degree. Like every boomer parent, and it's still that way these days.
that was the 80s version of, well, my son is trans.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So it was like this thing that I was, they tested me when I was a kid and I was really smart. So it was like I was on a college career path from kindergarten. And I didn't want to do that. And especially when I had my first daughter, I was like, no, I want to be a mom. And people were like, that's not a thing. They were just like, that's not an option. And I was like, what do you mean?
Well, I'm sure your girls appreciate that you made that choice because they literally wouldn't exist without it. And that's what, again, as that meme would highlight, or as I've heard people say, our grandparents, our grandmothers, they had 5, maybe 8, 10 kids, but they had then 50, 60 grandkids. And all those people didn't exist if they didn't have those children. Like that is a ton of people that exist, and God is able to work through them in the world because they had the babies.
Yes, the ripple effect you have as a good mother is above and beyond anything you'll ever do career-wise. And it's just like it's something that I just want to, 90% of what I'm trying to do is tell younger women that it's cool to be a mom. It's cool to be a good wife. Like that's cool. Let's make that the cool thing. And if girls grew up hearing that that was cool and that's respectable, and people would be like, whoa, that's awesome. So my reaction when I say to people I have 5 kids, 90% of the time it's like, oh, or it's like, ooh, 5. Oh, wow. And then they'll make like a smart ass joke about, oh, did you figure out what's causing that yet? Or, wow, you guys were really busy, huh? Like there's just rarely do we hear. Now in Orthodox circles we do, which is super cool. But rarely in the normie world do Andrew and I hear, whoa, 5 kids, high five. That's awesome. Good job. Wow, that's cool. We just don't hear that. It's more like a, wow, you're weird. That's really weird. So if we just change that narrative, if we just change the attitude, if we can counter the propaganda and show that, hey, this is cool, it's respectable, it's a great life, it's a happy life. It is. I do not live a life of misery and servitude. That's not my life. My years with my kids when they were all small, I would do it over again 1,000 times. And now that the older ones are in their 20s, they tell me, like, when we were younger, we didn't get it. Like when we were younger, we even kind of like, they loved that I was home and they would tell me that, but they got it from their friends all the time, right? That your family's a little bit weird. Right. And well, you don't want to do that, do you? You're going to like have a job and everything, right? And now that they're in their 20s, they're like, I get it. And I'm so like, my daughter just messaged us the other day and she's like, I'm so glad. Yeah, now they're very happy and they're very glad and they want to like do those things too. They both want to have kids and get married. And my 22-year-old said, Mom, it's the stupidest thing. Why are we as women all getting up early every day and going to work and pretending that working is fun? She's like, it's so stupid. And true. She does have a job and she likes her job, but she's like, why do we all pretend that this is the coolest thing? That's so dumb.
It's true.
It is true. I agree with her.
Rachel, thank you so much for joining me again. Everybody go subscribe to her YouTube channel. Click the @ in the title or the link in the video description. Is there anything you want to close with or sum up tonight's conversation or tell everybody what you got? I mean, you got so many cool plans coming up and exposure, like whatever you feel like you can share or what you feel comfortable with. Like maybe talk about what you what are your plans or whatever? You say whatever you feel comfortable saying.
Well, I'm still still totally in mom mode and putting that first, but to the degree that I can do other things now, I am doing some other things. So I'm gonna be on with Pearl from Just Pearly Things. If you guys know of her huge YouTube channel, that will be next Thursday. I'm doing Montanica in June with Patrick. Andrew and I will be there. I'm not going to be doing like speaking or anything like that, but I will be there, and I would love to meet all you guys and see everybody and hang out. It's a great time. It's really fun. And I got some other things I can't announce yet, but there's 2 books coming. I know. Why do I do this to myself? I don't understand.
Busy.
I know the one I've been working on for over a year, and it's like in the final stages. And then the other one is going to be a shorter book. That's my 15 best arguments against feminism. And that's kind of it. I have the YouTube channel now. I stream like once or twice a week. I don't have time to do it every day, but I've been doing some streams with Courtney on there that are doing really well, and a few other things. So I'm just happy to be on Patrick's stream anytime he invites me, because we always have a really good conversation and a fun dynamic, and the chat's always great. And so thanks for having me back.
Well, thank you for coming back. I always love when you come on. And so we always have a great dynamic. Everybody loves when you come on. You're one of the most frequently requested, and at this point, you're probably one of the most frequently appearing guests on the channel. But we love you. We love what you do. We love your work, and we wish you nothing but the best, especially with your new works, your new books, your new opportunities to spread the word. So we wish you, again, nothing but the best. Thank you. And with that being said, I will be back probably Sunday. So I wish everybody a wonderful weekend. Again, make sure you go subscribe to Rachel. Go follow her YouTube channel. Follow her on Twitter and Instagram. Click that link or click the @ there in the video title. But with that being said, until next time, as always, God bless.
Bye, guys.
All right, we are offline. Well, thank you so much for hopping on. That was great. I really did not mean to take
live on my end. That's weird.
It?
Yeah, that's what it says. It might just be that my thing is a little behind.
QuickBooks Self-Employed matches and categorizes.
That's really weird.
Let me see here. Okay, well, I'm just going to leave the studio. So, unfortunately, I will see you guys if we're still live. I'm hitting.
Yeah, we are still live. Well, so I guess you get an extra few seconds of us, and we'll just.
Something's going on with my internet. But all right. Well, anyways, love you, and stay in touch.
Bye, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.